Have you noticed, O weary one, how the moment your head touches the pillow, the mind rises like a restless river in the dark, and what was quiet in the daylight becomes loud in the night, as though 1,000 unseen mouths begin to speak at once inside your skull, each one demanding attention, each one pulling you toward a memory, a fear, a plan, a regret, a question that has no end. And have you wondered, in that hour when the room is still and the world is far away, why you cannot simply choose silence the way you choose to close your eyes? Why you cannot command peace the way you command your hand to move? Why the inner noise behaves like wind in an open valley, unowned, untamed, and yet painfully intimate? Listen then, and do not hurry, for the river of thoughts is not conquered by force, and the one who tries to strangle water only exhausts the hands and stirs the current into greater turbulence. But the one who learns to sit on the bank with steady breath begins, slowly, to understand the nature of flowing and the secret law that all streams obey. That water does not stop because it is hated, and it does not become clear because it is threatened, but it calms when it is allowed to move without being constantly struck. In an ancient time, when lamps were fed with oil and night was truly night, there was a path that wound through forest and stone toward a quiet river, and it was said among travelers that whoever reached that river in the hour before dawn would hear their own mind as if it were spoken aloud by the world itself, because the air there carried sound gently, and the water repeated everything it touched. And so a certain seeker, tired of his own inner storm, came walking with heavy feet and a chest that felt too tight to breathe in, thinking, "If I can find a teaching strong enough, I will silence the noise forever. I will become a person who does not tremble. I will become clean inside." And these were noble thoughts, and also dangerous thoughts, for they were born from craving, and craving is a fire that wears the mask of hope. He arrived at the river at night, and the moon was hidden behind thin clouds, and the stars were dim as if they too were sleepy, and the river moved with a soft, continuous voice, not loud, not quiet, but steady, like a chant that never ends. He sat down near the bank and waited, expecting some miracle of silence, but instead he discovered that in stillness his mind only grew louder, and the first thing the darkness showed him was everything he had been avoiding: the unfinished words, the faces he had disappointed, the future he feared, the small humiliations he still replayed as if replaying could change them, and the old sorrow that lived under his ribs like a stone. And as he sat there, he felt anger rise, not toward others, but toward himself and toward the very fact of being human. And he whispered, "Why can I not stop this? Why does my mind betray me when I seek rest? Why does it drag me into pain when all I want is peace?" And in that moment, he did what many do. He tried to fight his thoughts with more thoughts. He tried to drown the river with another river, and so the current grew more tangled, and his heart grew more tired. Then, from the path behind him, a figure approached with quiet footsteps, and though the seeker did not hear the steps at first, he felt a presence the way one feels a change in air, and he turned and saw an old mendicant wrapped in a simple robe, carrying no weapon, no ornament, no sign of authority, except the calm that sat in his eyes like a lamp that cannot be blown out by ordinary winds. The seeker rose quickly, embarrassed to be caught in his struggle, and bowed, and the mendicant returned the bow with the smallest tilt of the head, as if greeting an equal rather than a student. The seeker said, "Venerable one, if you are wise, tell me how to silence the mind, for it is like a swarm. It stings and circles and never rests, and I fear that I will live my whole life inside its noise." The mendicant looked at the river and then back at the seeker, and he did not answer with a command or a doctrine, but with a question that fell softly and yet pierced deeply, like a needle through cloth. When you call the mind your enemy, who is it that calls, and who is it that hears? The seeker blinked, confused, and the mendicant continued. If the mind were truly you, there would be no one to notice it, just as there is no separate watcher watching the sun, but you are here noticing the storm, which means there is something in you that is not the storm, something that can be present even while thoughts rise and fall. And if you learn to rest as that presence, the river may continue, but you will no longer drown. These words did not flatter the seeker, and they did not insult him, and because they did neither, they slipped past his defenses and landed in the place where truth lives. Yet the seeker still felt desperate, and he said, "But the thoughts feel stronger than me. They take me away. They pull me into fear and regret. They tell me stories, and I believe them before I even know I have believed." The mendicant sat down near the bank as if he had all the time in the world, and he said, "Then learn the first wisdom of the river, which is not to demand that water become stone, but to understand what water does. Thoughts are movements, not verdicts, and they rise by causes and conditions, like ripples from a fish, like waves from wind, like foam from falling rain. And if you chase each ripple, you will never see the river. But if you sit and watch, you will begin to know the pattern of your own mind." He pointed toward the water where the moon, hidden by clouds, still left a faint silver trace, and he said, "Look, the river is never the same from one moment to the next, yet you call it one river, and in the same way your mind is never the same from one moment to the next, yet you call it my mind, and treat it as a fixed thing. And because you treat it as fixed, you fear it, you worship it, you obey it. But the Buddha taught that what changes cannot be your master unless you hand it the throne." The seeker listened, but inside him the noise still moved, and he felt ashamed that wisdom did not instantly quiet him, and he lowered his head as if he had failed at the very beginning. The mendicant saw this and spoke gently, "Do not make peace another weapon to strike yourself with, for even the desire for silence can become another chain, and the middle way is not built from chains, it is built from release." Then the mendicant taught him a practice, not grand, not complicated, but ancient in its simplicity, like the first fire humans ever learned to keep. "Tonight, do not try to stop the river. Instead, become the bank. And the way you become the bank is by returning again and again to the breath, not harshly, not angrily, not with the attitude of a soldier forcing obedience, but with the attitude of a mother guiding a frightened child back home." He said, "Place your attention where the breath touches you most clearly, perhaps at the nostrils where air is cool as it enters and warm as it leaves, or in the chest where the rise and fall is slow, or in the belly where the movement is deep like a tide. And when a thought comes, do not curse it, do not chase it, do not argue with it, do not obey it, but simply name it softly in the mind, thinking, and then return to breath as you would return your hand to your own heart." The seeker tried, and immediately the mind produced a parade of thoughts more vivid than before, as if the river, noticing it was being watched, decided to perform. He felt irritation rise, but the mendicant whispered, "Yes, it will do this, because you have fed it attention for many years, and now you are feeding attention to something else, and it protests. But do not be fooled by the protest, for it is only habit." And then, as if sealing the teaching into the air, the mendicant recited a short verse, not to decorate the night, but to anchor the mind like a stone anchors a boat. "Breath comes in, I know it comes. breath goes out. I know it goes. Thoughts may pass like shadowed streams. I rest as sky above my dreams. The seeker repeated it inwardly, and something subtle shifted, not the disappearance of thought, but the widening of space around thought, the recognition that he could witness without drowning. And the mendicant said, "This is the first gate, to know that you are not required to believe every thought that visits, just as you are not required to invite every stranger into your home." The seeker asked, "But what if the thought is true? What if it warns me of something real? What if it tells me what I must fix?" The mendicant nodded, and his voice remained steady. "Some thoughts are useful like tools, and the middle way does not throw away tools, but the mind at night does not hold tools. It throws blades, it throws fire, it throws illusions, it speaks in extremes, it says always and never, it says ruined and hopeless, it says danger where there is only uncertainty. And so your task is not to become thoughtless, but to become discerning. And discernment begins when you stop reacting as if each thought were a trumpet announcing truth." He leaned slightly forward and said, "If you must do something, do it by day with a calm mind, and by night do what living beings have always done to survive. Rest, heal, restore, for even the bow must be unstrung or it will break." The seeker felt tears rise, not from sadness alone, but from relief, because he had been trying to solve his whole life at midnight, and it had never worked. And now, for the first time, he considered a gentler path, to let night be night, to let thoughts be thoughts, to let the river flow while he learned to remain. The mendicant's final words for this first part of the journey were simple, and they were spoken like an ancient blessing meant for tired hearts. Tonight, you do not need victory, you need kindness. When the mind wanders, return without cruelty, because every return is a seed of peace, and the river of thoughts will quiet not when you beat it, but when you stop feeding it with fear. So if you are listening now in your own room, in your own bed, with your own night pressing softly against the window, do not demand silence as a condition for rest, but instead become familiar with the gentle rhythm that has always been with you, the breath that enters and leaves without asking permission. And when the mind surges like dark water, do not jump in after it, do not chase it downstream, but sit on the bank and whisper, as if to a frightened inner child, "I see you, I hear you, and I return." And let that return be your first step into the river of thoughts, where the true teaching begins, not with the end of noise, but with the birth of steady presence. When the seeker returned to the river the next night, he did not come with the same sharp hunger for a miracle, because something in him had begun to understand that the mind cannot be commanded like a servant, and that peace does not arrive like a prize delivered into the hands of the impatient. He came instead with a quieter intention, still fragile, still uncertain, but more honest, like a pilgrim who finally admits, "I do not know the way, yet I will walk." And the night, hearing this humility, seemed to soften around him, as though even the darkness approved of a heart that stops demanding and starts listening. The river was there as before, unbroken and unconcerned, and the sky wore its dim garment of cloud and faint star salt, and the water made the same low voice, continuous and ancient, a voice that did not argue and did not flatter, and yet carried a strange comfort, for it reminded the seeker of something he had almost forgotten, that life moves whether you approve or not, and the wise do not waste their breath scolding the current. They learn how to sit with it, how to cross it, how to drink from it without being swept away. He sat on the bank where the reeds leaned like tired monks in prayer, and at first He watched his mind as the mendicant had taught him, naming, thinking, and returning to breath. And for a short while it seemed to work, not perfectly, but enough to give him a glimpse of space. And then, as often happens when the mind senses it is losing its old throne, the thoughts returned with greater force, as if a hidden door had opened inside him and released a crowded marketplace into the quiet valley of night. He felt again the rising panic, the sudden urgency to fix, to plan, to remember, to solve, and the old anger flickered in him like a match struck in wind. And then he remembered the mendicant's words, not as a doctrine, but as a hand on the shoulder. Do not make peace another weapon to strike yourself with. And so he did something different this time, something small and almost invisible to any watcher, and yet enormous in its consequence. He softened his jaw. He let his shoulders drop as if placing down a load he had been carrying for years, and he returned to the breath not as a soldier returning to battle, but as a traveler returning to shelter. It was then that the mendicant appeared again, not stepping loudly into the scene, not announcing himself, but simply arriving like a tree shade one only notices once it is already there. He sat beside the seeker without speaking for a long time, allowing the river to do what rivers do, and the mind to do what minds do. And in this silence the seeker felt something he had not expected, a strange easing, because his struggle was no longer a lonely struggle performed in secret. It was now a shared human condition, witnessed without judgment. At last the mendicant spoke, and his voice was as quiet as water moving around stones. You are learning, he said, the first secret that most people never learn, which is that thoughts multiply when you panic at them and soften when you stop treating them like an emergency. The seeker exhaled, shaky, and said, But they feel like an emergency, venerable one. They tell me I will lose something. They tell me I will fail. They tell me I have already failed. They tell me I must do something now, and my body believes them. The mendicant nodded slowly, as if agreeing not with the thoughts, but with the experience of being pulled by them. Then, he said, we must give the body a boat, because a stormy river is not crossed by arguing with the water. It is crossed by sitting in something that can float. The seeker looked at him, confused, and the mendicant pointed toward the river, where a small fisherman's boat was tied to a post, rocking gently, held by rope and habit, and the simple law that a boat, when it rests in water, is meant to rise and fall without drowning. Do you see? He said. The boat does not stop the river. It does not silence the current. It simply gives the traveler a stable place to sit while the water moves. In the same way, the breath is not meant to stop your thoughts. It is meant to give you a stable place to sit while thoughts move. He leaned slightly forward, and his words came in one long stream, as if he were pouring something sacred into the seeker's hands. The Buddha taught that the breath is always available, he said, not because it is magical, but because it is honest. Breath does not pretend, it does not rehearse, it does not lie, it does not jump to tomorrow and drag yesterday into the bed. It simply enters, it simply leaves, and if you learn to rest with it, you will taste a peace that is not dependent on the mind behaving. You will taste the peace of being here. The seeker listened, but the mind still surged, and he feared he was doing it wrong. And so the mendicant, seeing this fear, did not correct him harshly, but gave him a clearer method, like a lantern placed low to the ground. Choose one place where the breath touches you, he said, and do not chase it across the body like a hunter chasing a deer, for that only excites the mind. Choose one simple gate and return to it again and again. And if you cannot find the breath because the mind is loud, then begin by finding the body, because the body is the doorway back to the present. He guided the seeker as if guiding someone across stepping stones in a stream. "Feel your hands," he said, as if you are noticing hands for the first time. Feel their weight, their warmth, the small pulse in the fingertips. Then feel the breath at the nostrils, cool on the way in and warm on the way out. And if the breath is subtle, do not force it. Do not drag it. Do not try to make it deeper like a man trying to command the wind. Simply notice what is already happening and let the noticing be enough. The seeker tried, and for a few breaths, he found the coolness at the nostrils, and in that coolness there was a quiet anchor, and then a thought came like a bird landing on a branch. You forgot something important. He felt his chest tighten. He wanted to follow the bird, but the mendicant whispered, "Name it." So the seeker named it softly, "Worry," and returned to breath, and the bird flew off. Then another thought, "You will fail." Tightness again. "Fear," he named and returned. Then another, "Remember what she said to you." Heat in the face. "Memory," he named and returned. And slowly he began to see what he had never clearly seen before, that thoughts did not come as one solid enemy, but as many small visitors, each arriving, each stirring sensation, each leaving if not fed, and that the feeding was not the thought itself, but his belief and his wrestling. The mendicant watched with the patience of a mountain, and when the seeker grew discouraged, the mendicant did not allow him to drown in shame, but offered another teaching, gentle as rain. "Do not confuse wandering with failure," he said. "Wandering is the nature of the mind. The practice is the return. Each time you return, you are training freedom, and freedom is not the absence of thoughts. It is the absence of slavery." The seeker asked, "But how do I return without harshness, when I have returned 1,000 times and the mind still wanders?" The mendicant's eyes softened, and he spoke as if telling an old truth that had been carved into the stones of the world. "If you return with harshness," he said, "you plant harshness. If you return with patience, you plant patience. The mind is a field. Whatever you water grows. So return as you would return to a beloved home, again and again and again, without scolding the road." Then he recited a small verse, not long, not ornate, but carrying the rhythm of ancient recitations meant to settle the heart. "Breath is my boat, and presence my shore. Thought waves may rise, I do not go under. I name, I soften, I come back once more." The seeker repeated it inwardly, and it was as though his chest remembered how to loosen. But the mendicant knew the seeker would meet a deeper difficulty, the one that causes most people to abandon practice. The moment when the river becomes a whirlpool, when a thought arrives not as a small visitor, but as a strong current that hooks the mind and drags it downstream before the person even knows what happened. And so the mendicant spoke of whirlpools, because the Buddha did not teach only for calm days, he taught for storms. "Sometimes," he said, "a thought will catch you like a sudden eddy, an old wound, a fear about someone you love, a shame you have carried, a future you cannot control, and you will be swept away for many minutes or many hours, and then you will wake up inside the story and feel defeated. In that moment, do not add a second drowning by saying, 'I am hopeless,' because that is just another whirlpool. Instead, do the simplest thing. Return to the body." He placed his hand on the earth beside him, and the gesture itself felt like a teaching. "Feel the ground," he said. "Feel the weight of your body. Feel the breath. Let the senses gather you like scattered seeds." Then he taught the seeker a threefold return, simple enough for midnight, strong enough for storms. First, he said, feel where the mind has tightened the body, jaw, throat, chest, belly, hands, and soften one place, only one, as if loosening a knot in a rope. Second, take one slow breath and lengthen the exhale, not as control, but as reassurance to the nervous system, because the body calms when it knows you are not being chased. Third, whisper inwardly, this is a thought, this is a wave, I can float. The seeker practiced, and he felt the tightness in his belly soften a fraction, and even that small softening created space, and in the space he could breathe, and in the breathing he could see that the thought was still there, but was not a command. And this was a new kind of strength, the strength that does not crush, but steadies. The mendicant said, if you remember only one thing from this night, remember this. You do not need to win against the mind. You need to stop obeying it blindly. The Buddha did not become free by forcing the river to dry, but by learning where to place the boat. The seeker, still tired, still human, asked, and if I keep practicing, Venerable One, what will happen? The mendicant looked at the river as if listening to its answer, and then said, the river may still flow, but it will no longer terrify you. The thoughts may still come, but their voices will sound less like kings and more like passing travelers. You will begin to recognize the difference between a useful thought and a hungry thought, between a clear instruction and a fearful prophecy. And the greatest change will be this. Even when the mind is noisy, you will know a quiet place inside you that can sit and breathe and not be destroyed. The seeker sat in silence with that sentence, and the night moved around them like a slow animal, and the river kept speaking its continuous chant, and the seeker understood, not perfectly, but truly, that he had been trying to build peace by controlling water, when the wiser path was to build a vessel that could float. So if you are listening now, with your own river rising in the dark, let this be your second step. Do not demand that the water stop. Do not curse yourself for being human. Do not turn practice into punishment, but place your attention on the breath as if placing a lantern in the center of the room. And when thoughts surge, name them gently. Soften one place in the body, lengthen one exhale, and return. Return not as a defeat, but as devotion, because each return is a small vow to live in the middle, and the middle is where the mind, slowly, begins to grow quiet enough for sleep to carry you like a boat carried by calm water. And in that carrying, without effort and without violence, the river of thoughts begins to teach you its deeper law, that the one who stops chasing the current finally discovers the shore has been within them all along. On the third night, the river felt closer, not because the seeker had walked nearer to it, but because he had begun to hear it inside his own ribs, as if the current that moved through the valley had always been moving through him as well. Only he had drowned it out with struggle and distraction, and now, having learned to sit with breath as a boat, he could no longer pretend he did not know the truth, that his mind was not a single voice, but a whole weathered landscape, and the loudest sounds at night were often not new fears at all, but old echoes returning to ask for attention one last time. He came again to the bank, and the sky wore the same dim garment of cloud and stardust, and the reeds leaned in their quiet prayer, and he sat down with a little more reverence than before, as if he had begun to recognize that the river was not an enemy, and that the real danger was not the water, but his habit of leaping into it whenever a shadow moved. He placed his attention at the nostrils, cool in, warm out, and he named the small thoughts as they came: planning, worry, memory, judging, and returned again and again without cruelty, and for a while he floated, not perfectly, but steadily enough that his chest did not tighten with panic, and he thought, "Perhaps this is it. Perhaps I have found the way." But the river, ancient and patient, was not finished teaching him, because the mind is not only a stream of small visitors. Sometimes it is a deep current beneath the surface that suddenly rises and catches the boat. And the most common deep current is not tomorrow, but yesterday. For the past is a strange water. It does not exist anymore, yet it pulls with the weight of a mountain. Without warning, a memory rose in him, not a simple image, but a whole scene with smell and sound and emotion, as vivid as if someone had opened a sealed jar and released old air into the present. He saw a face, heard a tone of voice, felt again the sting of humiliation, and the body responded instantly, as bodies do, tightening as if danger were present now, even though the danger was only a shadow on the water. His boat wobbled. His breath became thin. The mind said, "How could you let that happen? Why didn't you speak? Why did you stay? Why were you so weak?" And he felt the old heat rise, the old shame, the old anger that always arrived together like three riders on one horse. And before he understood what was happening, he was no longer on the bank at all. He was in the past, standing in that old room, living again inside words that had already been spoken and could not be taken back. He opened his eyes and looked at the river, but it did not help. The memory had hooked him, and the hook felt like truth, and he whispered bitterly, "So this is my mind, a place that will never let me go, a river that drags me back again and again." And in that bitterness, he almost forgot the one thing he had learned, that bitterness is also a current. Then the mendicant arrived, as if the night itself had sent him, and he sat beside the seeker without judgment, listening to the river and to the silence in the seeker's throat. And after a while he spoke, and his voice was quiet enough that it did not disturb the water. "You have met the current of the past," he said, "and now you will learn why it feels stronger than it is." The seeker swallowed, embarrassed, and said, "I thought I was learning to return to breath, but the past comes like a flood, and I cannot stop it. It feels like it owns me, venerable one. It feels like the memory is more real than this river in front of me." The mendicant nodded slowly, as if he had heard this confession 1,000 times from 1,000 weary hearts. "Yes," he said, "because memory does not visit only as an image, it visits as sensation, and sensation convinces the mind, and the mind writes a story. This is happening again, and then the body believes it, and so the flood grows. But the Buddha taught that the past is a picture carried by the mind, and the suffering comes not from seeing the picture, but from stepping into it and calling it home." The seeker felt a surge of resistance, because it sounded too simple, and he said, "But the past shaped me. It harmed me. It taught me fear. How can it be only a picture?" The mendicant's eyes did not harden. "It is not only a picture," he said. "It is also a wound, and wounds speak, and the Buddha never asked a wound to be silent by force. He asked it to be met with clear seeing and compassion, so it could stop shouting." He looked toward the river and spoke as if speaking to the water itself. "See how the river carries fallen leaves," he said. "A leaf drops into the stream, and the stream carries it. The leaf is real, and the falling was real, but the leaf does not become the river, and the river does not stop because of the leaf. It moves on. In the same way, events fall into your mind, and the mind carries them. But the event is not your whole being unless you decide it is." The seeker listened, still trembling, and the mendicant continued, for he knew that trembling is often the body's way of releasing what it has held too long. "The Buddha taught 3 ways of meeting memory," he said, "and each one is a gate that leads out of drowning." The seeker leaned forward as if thirsty. "First," the mendicant said, "you must learn to recognize memory as memory, not as present danger. When the scene appears, do not say, 'I am back there.' Say softly, 'A memory is here.' This is not a trick. It is honesty. It is the mind telling the truth about what is happening. A picture, not a prophecy." "Second," he continued, "you must meet the body, because the body is where memory hides its hook. Notice where the past grips you: throat, chest, belly, jaw. And instead of fighting the sensation, breathe into it as you would breathe warmth into cold hands, because the Buddha taught that sensations rise and pass like waves, and when you do not feed them with fear, they lose their power to command. Third," he said, "you must offer the memory what it truly wants, because memory is not only a thief, it is also a messenger. Many memories return because they carry a lesson unfinished, a grief unwept, a boundary unclaimed, a compassion not yet offered to the younger you who endured what you could not yet understand." The seeker's eyes filled with tears at these words, for he had spent years blaming his younger self, calling him weak, foolish, naive, and he had never once thought to treat that younger self as a living being worthy of tenderness. The mendicant watched him gently and said, "If a child came to you and said, 'I suffered,' would you strike the child with insults? Yet when your own memory returns, you strike yourself. This is not the middle way. The middle way is firm and kind." The seeker whispered, "But if I soften toward myself, won't I become lazy? Won't I excuse what happened? Won't I stop improving?" The mendicant shook his head, and his voice was as steady as stone. "Compassion is not excuse," he said. "Compassion is clarity without cruelty." The Buddha did not become wise by hating himself into goodness. He became free by seeing clearly and letting go. Then, as if turning the teaching into something the seeker could actually use at midnight, the mendicant gave him a practice shaped like an ancient rite, simple yet profound, meant to be repeated until it becomes the mind's new habit. "When a memory comes," he said, "do not wrestle it to the ground. Sit upright in your boat of breath and perform 3 movements, slow as a sacred gesture. The first movement is naming, memory. The second movement is grounding. Feel the breath. Feel the hands. Feel the weight of your body on the earth. The third movement is blessing. Offer a short phrase of kindness to the younger self inside the memory." The seeker asked, "What phrase, Venerable One?" The mendicant closed his eyes for a moment, and when he opened them, his gaze was like morning light. "Say," he whispered, "may you be safe. May you be free from fear. May you rest. And do not say it as poetry. Say it as medicine." The seeker tried, right there, while the memory still hovered like fog, and he named it memory. And he felt the tightness in his chest, and he breathed into it, and he whispered inwardly to that younger self, "May you be safe." And something shifted. Not that the memory disappeared, but that it softened around the edges, as if it had been held too tightly for too long and was finally allowed to loosen. The mendicant said, "Do you see? The past shouts when it is ignored, but when it is met with gentle seeing, it often grows quieter, because its deepest demand is not to punish you, but to be acknowledged." The seeker nodded, astonished, because he had always believed that acknowledging the past would trap him in it. And yet here was the opposite truth. Ignoring the past was what kept it alive like a hungry ghost. Acknowledging it with kindness allowed it to finally exhale. Still, the seeker feared that kindness would open the door to endless waves of memory, and he said, But what if there are too many memories, too many wounds, too many scenes? The mendicant's mouth curved into the smallest smile, like someone who understands the mind's fear of infinity. Then you meet them one by one, he said, because even a great river is crossed one step at a time, and the Buddha never asked you to swallow the ocean. He asked you to take the next breath. He pointed to the river's surface where small ripples moved through moon shadow. Notice, he said, how the water carries each ripple and then releases it. It does not hold them like treasures. It does not build a museum of waves. It receives, and it lets go. You can learn this too. Then he offered a verse, shaped like the old recitations that were used not to impress the intellect, but to settle the heart. Past is a shadow on moving streams. I name it gently. It loosens its grip. Breath is my boat, the body my shore. I bless the child I once ignored. The seeker repeated the verse inwardly, and he felt the truth of it not in his logic, but in his nervous system. The way the shoulders drop when a thread is no longer believed. The way the belly softens when the body is told, "You are safe now." The way the breath deepens when the mind stops rehearsing disaster. The mendicant said, "There is another subtle danger in memory." And his voice grew slightly more serious, though still gentle. And it is the mind's desire to rewrite the past, as if rewriting could change it. The mind sits at night and replays scenes, crafting better answers, sharper words, stronger boundaries, and it calls this processing. But often it is only pride and pain spinning a wheel. If you must learn from the past, do it in the daylight and take one real action. At night, let the past be what it is, a leaf on the river, and let your boat float. The seeker breathed, and he realized how many hours of his life he had spent rewriting old conversations, and how little those rewrites had ever healed him. And he saw, as if for the first time, that the real healing was not in perfect imaginary speeches, but in present tenderness and present wisdom. The mendicant's final teaching for this third part was quiet, and because it was quiet, it carried great power. "Do not fear memories," he said. "Fear is what turns them into monsters. Meet them as you would meet tired travelers at your door. You do not let them burn your house, but you do not strike them either. You give them a cup of water. You listen for the message. You set a boundary if needed, and then you let them go on their way." The seeker looked at the river, and in the river's steady voice, he heard something like agreement, as if the world itself were saying, "Yes, this is the way." So if you are listening now, and the night brings you the old scenes, the old voices, the old shame, the old grief, do not panic and do not obey. Name the memory as memory, return to the breath as boat, feel the body as shore, and offer one gentle blessing to the younger you who endured what you could not yet understand, because the river of thoughts becomes calmer, not when you drown the past, but when you stop feeding it with fear and begin meeting it with clear, compassionate seeing, the way the Buddha taught, firm in truth, soft in heart, and steady enough to let the water pass. On the fourth night, the seeker arrived at the river with a quieter face than before, as if the water had already begun to wash some hardness out of him. Yet inside his chest there still lived a hidden restlessness, the kind that does not shout like anger or ache like grief, but hums like a distant drum, because it is made of tomorrow, and tomorrow is a strange land. It has not happened, it cannot be touched, and yet it can steal the breath more efficiently than any real enemy. He sat on the bank where the reeds leaned, and he placed himself again in the boat of breath, cool air entering, warm air leaving, and he named the small visitors as they came, and for a time, the river of thoughts seemed gentle, rippling but not violent, moving but not dragging, and the seeker felt a small pride rise like a bright fish in dark water, thinking, "I am learning, I am improving." And at that very moment, the mind did what it always does when it smells pride. It reached forward, hungry, and tried to secure the future of peace, as if peace could be locked in a box and carried. A thought arrived wearing the mask of responsibility, and it said, "But what if you lose this calm tomorrow?" And the body tightened. Another thought followed quickly, like a second wave that uses the first wave's momentum. What if something happens? What if you are not ready? What if you fail again? And the seeker felt the boat wobble beneath him, because the future current does not come like one clear fear, but like many small hooks, each one catching the mind and pulling it forward into a place where it cannot stand. His breath became thin, and his attention, which had been a quiet lantern, suddenly flickered, and before he knew it, the mind had built an entire city of tomorrow. Conversations that might go wrong, losses that might come, humiliations that might return, illnesses that might appear, betrayals that might happen. And in each imagined scene, his body reacted as if the scene were already real, as if the future had walked into the room and placed its cold hand on his throat. He tried to return to the breath, but the mind insisted, "No, you must solve this now." And he felt that old familiar sensation, the whirlpool, where thought begins to spin, where logic is present but useless, where the same problem circles again and again, and the circle calls itself preparation, though it is only fear dressing itself in respectable clothing. The seeker whispered harshly, "I cannot escape this." And in the harshness, his mind tightened further, because the mind is like a frightened animal. When you shout at it, it does not become wise. It becomes more wild. Then, as if the night had been waiting for this moment, the mendicant appeared again, and he did not arrive with urgency, because urgency feeds whirlpools. He arrived with the calm of someone who knows that even violent water can be met if one stops thrashing. He sat down beside the seeker and listened to the river, and after a long silence he said, "You have met the future current, and it is strong, not because tomorrow is strong, but because your mind believes it can control tomorrow by suffering today." The seeker clenched his jaw and said, "But if I do not think ahead, Venerable One, I will be foolish, I will be careless, I will be harmed. What if my worry is the only shield I have?" The mendicant's eyes remained soft, and he answered in a long sentence that moved slowly, as if he were pouring cool water over hot stone. "Worry is not a shield," he said. "It is a fire you carry in your hands, and because you carry it, you call it protection, but it burns you while you hold it." And the Buddha taught that wise preparation is like building a roof before rain, while worry is like lying awake all night, rehearsing thunder, as if rehearsal could stop the sky. The seeker wanted to argue, because fear does not like to be exposed, but the mendicant did not wrestle with him. He simply asked a question that made the seeker's mind pause for one small breath, and that pause was the beginning of freedom. "Tell me," the mendicant asked, "when you are worrying, are you taking a real step, or are you spinning?" The seeker hesitated, and then he admitted, "Spinning." "And when you are spinning," the mendicant asked, "does your body become ready, or does it become exhausted?" The seeker swallowed, exhausted. Then, the mendicant said gently, "Your worry is not preparing you for tomorrow. It is stealing tomorrow's strength." The seeker stared at the water, because he could feel the truth of that sentence in his bones. He had lived so many days already tired from battles that never occurred. The mendicant continued, because he knew this was not a lesson the intellect alone could hold. It had to become a practice, something the seeker could do when the mind was loud and the night was deep. The Buddha taught, he said, that the future is built from causes and conditions, and you can influence some causes by wise actions, but you cannot control all conditions, and the one who tries to control all conditions becomes like a man trying to hold the river in his fists. He ends up holding nothing but his own tension. He pointed toward the river, where the current curved around a cluster of stones, forming a small swirling eddy that looked in the dim light like a dark eye. "Look," he said. "A whirlpool forms where water meets resistance and turns in on itself. Your anxious mind is like this. It meets uncertainty and cannot accept it, and so it turns inward and spins, trying to make certainty out of what cannot be made certain." The seeker said, "So what do I do when the spinning starts?" The mendicant answered, "You do not jump into the whirlpool with your whole body. You step back onto the bank." The seeker frowned. "How?" The mendicant's voice became even more practical, as if he were handing the seeker a rope. "First," he said, "you name the current honestly. Future. Not reality, not truth, not prophecy, but future thoughts are here. This naming is the first opening of the fist. Second," he said, "you return to what is touchable. The breath, the body, the ground. Feel the weight of your hands, the pressure where your body meets the earth, the slow movement of air. You must give the nervous system a message. This moment is not attacking you. Third," he said, "you ask one sacred question that cuts through spinning like a knife through rope. What is one small real action I can take today? If there is an action, take note of it for daylight. If there is no action, then your mind is not preparing. It is only suffering, so you release the thought with kindness." The seeker listened, but fear resisted, because fear always wants more than one step. It wants guarantees. It wants the whole future pinned down like an insect. And so he said, "But one small action is not enough. What if the problem is huge?" The mendicant smiled, not mocking, but compassionate, because he knew the mind's hunger for certainty. "The Buddha did not promise you that one breath solves all storms," he said. "He promised you that one breath can bring you back to the middle, and from the middle, you can take the next wise step. And the one who demands the whole staircase at once will never climb, because he will stand at the bottom arguing with the sky." Then, as if to seal the method into the seeker's tired mind, the mendicant offered a short verse, simple enough to remember in the hour of spinning. "Tomorrow is mist. I cannot hold it. This breath is real. I can return. One step, one truth, one softer exhale. The whirlpool fades when I do not feed it." The seeker repeated the verse inwardly, and as he did, he noticed something he had not noticed before, that the anxious thought did not have the same force when he stopped treating it like a command, and that the sensation in his body, tight chest, shallow breath, began to ease when he lengthened the exhale, not by force, but by invitation, as if telling the body, "You may loosen now." Still, the future current returned again, because the mind is persistent, and it whispered, "But what if you forget? What if you fail? What if the fear comes back stronger?" And the seeker felt the first signs of spinning again, and he looked at the mendicant helplessly. The mendicant said, "Ah, this is a deeper teaching now. The mind uses the fear of fear to create more fear. It says, 'What if I worry later?' And then it worries now about worrying later, and in this way it builds a tower of smoke and trembles beneath it." He leaned slightly forward and spoke as if speaking directly into the seeker's chest. "Do not try to defeat anxiety," he said. "Meet it as you meet a loud traveler at night. Acknowledge, offer a seat, but do not hand him the keys to your home." The seeker whispered, "How do I not hand over the keys?" The mendicant answered, "By learning the difference between hearing and obeying. A thought can speak, and you can hear it, and yet you do not have to rise from bed and follow it into the dark. This is the middle way between suppression and slavery." He pointed to the river again. "Water will always move," he said. "Thoughts will always arise. Your freedom is not to stop arising. Your freedom is to stop being dragged." Then the mendicant offered a practice that was even simpler than the 3 steps, meant for moments when the mind is too tired to think clearly. A single gesture of return. "When the whirlpool begins," he said, "place one hand on the belly and feel the belly rise and fall, and say inwardly, 'Here.' Then feel the exhale lengthen and say inwardly, 'Now.' Then feel the weight of your body on the earth and say inwardly, 'Enough.'" The seeker tried it, and the simplicity startled him, because the mind loves complicated rituals, believing complexity equals power. But the body loves simple truths, because simple truths are believable. Here, now, enough. As he repeated these words with breath, the anxious images did not instantly vanish, but they lost their sharpness, as if the mind's projector had been turned down a little. The scenes of tomorrow were still there, but they were thinner, less convincing, and the seeker could finally feel the difference between a real danger and an imagined one. Real danger has weight in the world. Imagined danger has weight mostly in the chest. The mendicant said, "One more thing must be known, or else you will return again and again to the same whirlpool, believing you are failing." The seeker looked up. "Night magnifies the future," the mendicant said, "because the body is tired, and tiredness is like fog. It makes every shape look larger and more frightening. In the morning, the same thought that terrifies you at midnight will often look small, even foolish. So do not trust the mind's midnight prophecies. Respect them as signals of fatigue, not as truth." The seeker's eyes softened because he recognized this. How many times had he been sure at night that his life was collapsing, only to wake and feel the collapse was not as real as the mind insisted? "And if a thought truly needs action," the mendicant continued, "you will still have it in the daylight, and you will handle it better with a rested mind. So give night its rightful purpose, to restore." The river continued its endless chant, and the seeker realized the chant was not saying solve, solve, solve. It was saying flow, flow, flow. And there was a strange comfort in that. Life would move, whether he worried or not. And if life would move, perhaps he could choose not to bleed himself dry on the shore. The mendicant's final words for this 4th part were spoken like a vow that a tired heart could actually keep. "When tomorrow rises in your mind," he said, "bow to it gently, as you would bow to a cloud passing in the sky, and say, 'I see you.' Then return to what is real: the breath, the body, the bed, the quiet room. Take one small wise note if needed, and then release the rest into the hands of morning. This is not carelessness. This is the middle way: caring without clenching, preparing without burning, living without drowning." So if you are listening now and the future comes rushing at you with its many faces and its cold hands, do not wrestle the river. Name the current, ground in breath, ask for one small real step, and if there is no step, whisper, "Here, now, enough," and let the whirlpool pass without feeding it, because the Buddha's quiet wisdom is not a promise that you will never feel anxiety. but a promise that you can learn, breath by breath, to float above it until sleep, gentle and deep, carries you like a boat on calm water. On the 5th night, the seeker came not as someone begging the river to be quiet, but as someone beginning to respect the river's laws. And this respect made him softer, not weaker, because the soft heart can learn without breaking, while the hard heart learns only by cracking. He walked the familiar path through the sleeping trees, and the air carried that cool, half-sacred stillness that belongs to late night, when even the insects speak more gently. And he felt within him a strange new curiosity, the kind that does not demand an answer immediately, but simply watches, because he had begun to understand that the mind is not only noise, it is also pattern, and pattern can be seen. He reached the bank where the reeds bent and the water moved in its endless, low chant, and he sat down and placed himself in the boat of breath, cool in, warm out, and he named the small visitors as they came: memory, future, judging, worry, and returned without cruelty. And for a time he floated, and the water felt like it was carrying him rather than pulling him, and he thought, almost with tenderness, perhaps the river is not trying to drown me. Perhaps it is trying to teach me how I drown myself. But then, as if to answer that thought, the mind caught on something small, almost nothing, a tiny spark that should have died quickly, and yet it did not die. It grew, it multiplied, it spread like fire through dry grass, and suddenly the seeker found himself thinking the same thought again and again, turning it, chewing it, sharpening it, repeating it, not because the thought was wise, but because something in him had been triggered, and the trigger was like a stone in the river. The water did not stop, but it began to swirl around that stone, forming eddies and foam, and the foam became noise. He noticed the pattern and felt frustration rise, because he had been practicing, he had been returning, he had been naming, and yet here was the mind, trapped again around a single point. And he whispered, "Why does this happen? Why does the river snag me like this?" And in his whisper, there was the old fear of failure, the fear that practice was useless, the fear that he would always be swept away. The mendicant arrived as he often did, quiet as moonlight, and sat beside him without ceremony, and for a long time he said nothing, allowing the seeker to feel what he was feeling without being rescued by words, because sometimes the mind needs to taste its own pattern fully before it can release it. Then at last the mendicant spoke, and his voice was like a hand smoothing water. "You have discovered the stones," he said, "and this discovery is a blessing, though it may not feel like one yet." The seeker frowned. "Stones?" The mendicant pointed to the river, where the current curved around a cluster of rocks, the water forming little whirlings in small, restless circles, not violent, but persistent, as if the river had found something it could not pass straight through. "See how the water moves," he said. "It does not become noisy everywhere. It becomes noisy in certain places, where the stones lie beneath the surface. Your mind is the same. It is not chaos without cause. It is noise shaped by triggers, by habits, by hidden seeds." The seeker felt his chest tighten because he sensed what the mendicant meant, that his suffering was not only what happened to him, but also how his mind had learned to react, how it had learned to spiral, how it had practiced noise until noise became easy. "But why?" the seeker asked. "Do some thoughts pass like birds, and others become storms?" The mendicant nodded slowly, as if honoring the question. "Because some thoughts touch nothing," he said, "and others strike old stones. Fear, pride, shame, craving, grief, the hunger to be seen, the terror of being abandoned, the need to be right, the need to control. These are not merely thoughts. These are roots in the earth, and when a thought touches a root, the whole tree shakes. The seeker listened, and in the listening he began to remember his own patterns, as if seeing them from above. How a certain look from someone could ignite a whole night of self-doubt. How a certain silence could become a prophecy of rejection. How a small mistake could turn into an identity. How one uncertain message could become a spiral of imagined disasters. How the mind, like a dog trained on fear, would run the same circle again and again, even when there was no real threat in the room. The mendicant continued, and his words came long and steady, like an ancient teaching carried by breath. The Buddha taught, he said, that the mind is a garden of seeds, and every seed sprouts according to conditions. If you water the seed of fear, fear grows. If you water the seed of resentment, resentment grows. If you water the seed of kindness, kindness grows. And the most secret watering is not what you do once in a great moment, but what you repeat in small moments until it becomes your nature. The seeker's face tightened. So my nature is wrong, he said softly, because shame still lived near the center of him and liked to drink any teaching and turn it into a verdict. The mendicant shook his head gently. Your nature is not wrong, he said. Your habits are trained, and what is trained can be retrained. He pointed again to the stones. Look, he said, the river does not hate the stones. It simply reveals them. And when you see where the river becomes noisy, you learn where the stones are. This is the beginning of wisdom. Not to blame yourself for noise, but to study it with calm eyes. The seeker asked, how do I study it, Venerable One, when I am already caught? The mendicant's voice became practical, like a lantern lowered into a dark stairwell. First, he said, you must learn to recognize the moment a stone is struck, because most people only notice the storm after it has already grown. Notice the earliest sign: tight jaw, quick breath, heat in the chest, a sudden urge to check, to fix, to defend, to replay, to prove. This earliest sign is the river whispering, stone. Second, he said, you ask one quiet question. What was the trigger? Not to accuse anyone, not to build more story, but to see the cause. Perhaps it was a word, a look, a memory, a tiredness, a hunger, a loneliness, a comparison. Triggers are often simple. The mind is what makes them heavy. Third, he said, you meet the habit that follows the trigger, because the trigger is only the spark. The habit is the firewood. Some minds habitually catastrophize, some habitually rehearse arguments, some habitually seek reassurance, some habitually shame themselves, some habitually numb out, some habitually cling to control. You must learn your habit the way a farmer learns the seasons. The seeker felt something open in him, because the teaching was not asking him to become a saint overnight. It was asking him to become an honest observer of his own inner weather. But what, he asked, do I do when I see the trigger and the habit, when I see the stone and the swirling? The mendicant looked at him with calm certainty. Then you practice the middle way with the stone, he said. And the middle way is not to pretend the stone is not there, and not to smash the stone with rage, but to move the boat. The seeker frowned again. Move the boat? Yes, the mendicant said. The stone is real. The swirl is real. But you do not have to sit your boat in the swirl and call it home. You can drift slightly to the side, to a calmer channel. In the mind, drifting means shifting attention. Back to breath, back to body, back to the senses, back to what is truly present. He paused, then added, And drifting also means one more thing: meeting the root beneath the trigger with kindness, because most habits are built on fear, and fear calms when it is seen. The seeker's eyes lowered, because he did not like how often the root beneath his triggers was simply the fear of not being enough. The mendicant, as if hearing that unspoken truth, recited a verse that sounded like something old, carried across deserts and forests by wandering monks. Where water grows loud, a hidden stone lies near. I do not curse the river. I learn its secret shape. I see the spark. I see the wood. I breathe and drift to gentler flow. The seeker repeated the verse inwardly, and it steadied him. Then the mendicant told him a story, not to entertain, but to reveal the heart of the matter, because stories enter places that logic cannot reach. There was once, he said, a man who lived near a market where traders shouted and animals cried and dust rose in the heat, and this man had a habit of anger. Each time someone spoke sharply, his chest would ignite, his mind would race, and he would spend hours replaying the insult, planning revenge, proving in his imagination that he was right and others were foolish. And he believed his anger was strength because it made him feel large, but inside, it made him exhausted and bitter, like a well filled with ash. He came to the Buddha and said, "Teacher, I cannot stop this fire. People provoke me, and I must defend my honor." The Buddha listened and asked him quietly, "When the fire rises, what does your body do?" The man said, "My jaw tightens, my fists clench, my breath becomes fast." The Buddha asked, "And what does your mind do?" The man said, "It repeats the insult, it builds arguments, it imagines victory." The Buddha nodded. "Then," he said, "your anger is not created by others alone. It is created by a stone in your river and by the firewood you place on it." The man resisted. "So it is my fault?" The Buddha answered, "Not fault, condition. If you want freedom, you must see the conditions. Otherwise, you will keep blaming the wind for the smoke while you keep feeding the fire." Then the Buddha gave him a practice. When provoked, before speaking, he was to take 3 breaths and soften one place in the body, jaw, belly, hands, and he was to ask himself, "What am I protecting right now?" And the man discovered, again and again, that what he was protecting was not true dignity, but a fragile image of himself, and beneath that image was fear. And when he began to meet the fear instead of feeding the image, the anger slowly lost its throne. The mendicant let the story settle, then turned back to the seeker. "You see," he said, "the stone is often not the trigger itself, but the root beneath it. Fear of being small, fear of being unseen, fear of being unsafe, fear of being unlovable, fear of losing control. The trigger only touches the root. The habit only grows because the root is hungry." The seeker whispered, "So I must remove the stones." The mendicant shook his head gently, because the path is not violence. "Do not rush to remove," he said. "First learn to see. Some stones dissolve with seeing. Some stones soften with compassion. Some stones are old and will take time. The Buddha did not ask you to become perfect. He asked you to become awake." He leaned slightly forward, and his next words felt like a vow offered to the seeker's tired heart. "Tonight," he said, "choose one pattern that troubles you most, one stone you often strike. When it appears, do not drown in it. Instead, do 4 quiet things. Name the trigger, feel the body, identify the habit, and then choose one gentler channel, even if only for 1 breath. One breath of freedom is not small. It is the beginning of a new life." The seeker breathed in, cool, and breathed out, warm. and he felt how the mind still wanted to spin. But he also felt something else now, a small power that did not come from control, but from understanding, the power of seeing a pattern and not immediately obeying it. And the mendicant's final teaching for this fifth part came like a long, calm river sentence, slow enough to be believed. The inner noise is not a curse sent by fate, he said. It is water meeting stones. If you learn where your stones are, you will stop being surprised by the swirls. If you stop feeding the swirls with fear, the water will clear. And if you return again and again with kindness, the garden of the mind will change its seeds until one day you will sit at night and hear the river still flowing. Yes, but also hear something deeper beneath it, your own steady presence, quiet as dawn, enduring as the shore. So if you are listening now and you notice the place where your thoughts always become loud, do not call it failure. Call it a stone revealed, a secret made visible, a chance to learn your own river, and then place your attention back on breath. Soften one knot in the body and drift to a calmer channel. Because the middle way is not the art of never being triggered. It is the art of seeing the trigger early, meeting it wisely, and choosing, breath by breath, not to build your home in the swirl. On the sixth night, the seeker walked to the river with a strange heaviness that did not come from memory or from tomorrow, but from something more subtle, something that hid inside ordinary life, like dust hides inside cloth. Because in the daylight, he had smiled and spoken and completed his tasks, and yet inside him, there had been a quiet sting that kept returning, a whisper that said, "You are behind." And then, almost immediately, another whisper that tried to defend him. "No, you are ahead." And in this way, his mind had spent the day measuring itself like a merchant measuring grain, and every measurement left him poorer. He sat on the familiar bank where reeds bowed and water moved, and he placed himself in the boat of breath, cool in, warm out. And at first he felt steady, but then, as if stirred by an unseen hand, thoughts began to rise that did not ask for solutions and did not rehearse disasters, but compared his path to other paths, his peace to other people's peace, his wounds to other people's wounds, his discipline to other people's discipline, his worth to other people's worth, and even his practice itself became a contest, and the river of thoughts, which had been slowly clearing, suddenly clouded again, not with storms, but with a gray murk that made everything feel dull and tense. He noticed this murk and grew ashamed, because he had thought comparison was a childish thing, something obvious, something he had already outgrown. And yet here it was, alive and sharp, cutting him in a place he did not even know was still tender. The mendicant arrived quietly, as always, and sat beside him as if the night had given him a permanent seat on the earth. And for a long time he said nothing, because the poison of comparison cannot be argued away quickly. It must be seen in its full shape, and the seeker must feel how it tastes in the body, how it tightens the throat, how it narrows the breath, how it steals the simple sweetness of being alive. At last, the mendicant spoke, and his voice was as soft as a cloth laid over a lamp to make the light gentle. "You have met the weeds," he said, "and weeds grow silently, even in a garden that looks calm from far away." The seeker frowned. "Weeds?" "Yes," the mendicant said, "the weeds of comparison, the mind's habit of turning life into better and worse, higher and lower, more worthy and less worthy. And because these weeds grow in the soil of insecurity, they spread quickly and drink the water meant for peace." The seeker exhaled, and his breath was not as smooth as he wished it to be. "I don't understand," he admitted. I came to the river to find quiet, and now my mind measures everything, even my own practice. It says others are more advanced, others are calmer, others have fewer wounds, others are stronger. And then it says, I should be like them. And in that moment, I feel small. Or it flips, and it says I am doing better than others. And in that moment, I feel proud. But the pride is restless too, because it fears falling. So either way, I feel disturbed, and I don't know how to stop. The mendicant nodded, as if the seeker had spoken the experience of countless hearts. Because comparison, he said, is not only one thought, it is a whole way of seeing, a lens the mind puts on reality, and once the lens is on, everything becomes distorted. Even peace becomes a trophy, even wisdom becomes a ladder, even compassion becomes a mask to prove you are good. And the Buddha taught that when the mind lives on ladders, it forgets the ground. He pointed to the river, where the surface carried faint ripples in the dimness. Do you see the water? He asked. It does not compare itself to other rivers. It does not say, I am faster, I am slower, I am clearer, I am dirtier. It moves according to conditions, stones, slope, rain, seasons, and it fulfills its nature without shame. If you learn to live like water, you would not need to measure yourself to exist. The seeker wanted to believe this, but the habit was deep, and he whispered, But if I stop comparing, how will I improve? Doesn't comparison push people to grow? The mendicant's eyes remained gentle, and his answer came slowly, in one long stream, because this was a key teaching, and he did not want it to be swallowed too fast. Comparison can push, he said, but it pushes with a whip, and a whip creates speed, not peace. The Buddha did not teach growth through humiliation. He taught growth through clear seeing. There is a difference between learning from others and measuring yourself against others, just as there is a difference between a lamp that shows the road and a fire that burns your feet. He continued, When you learn from others, you feel inspired, humble, grateful. When you measure yourself, you feel either inferior or superior, and both are sickness, because both tighten the heart and keep it from resting. Then, because the mind loves stories more than lectures, the mendicant told the seeker of an old village where two craftsmen lived, one a potter and one a weaver, and both were skilled in their own ways. The potter made bowls so balanced that the water sat in them like a calm lake, and the weaver made cloth so smooth that it seemed to flow like wind across the skin. And for many seasons they lived in peace until the potter began to watch the weaver's work with envy, thinking, His cloth is admired more than my bowls. And the weaver began to watch the potter's work with envy, thinking, His bowls last longer than my cloth. And soon both men, though still skilled, became bitter, because their eyes no longer rested on their own hands. They rested on the other man's praise. They began to measure whose customers were more grateful, whose work was more valued, whose name was spoken more often. And as they measured, their craft became tense. The potter's hands shook slightly with the need to prove, and his bowls cracked. The weaver's mind raced with the need to win, and his threads tangled. And each time they failed, they compared again, and the comparison made them fail again. And in this way, a simple weed turned into a field of suffering. One evening, the mendicant said, the village elder gathered them and placed a clay bowl and a piece of woven cloth before them, and he asked, Which is better? The potter said quickly, The bowl, because it holds water. The weaver said quickly, The cloth, because it warms the body. The elder smiled sadly. And if you are thirsty? He asked. The bowl, they admitted. And if you are cold? He asked. The cloth, they admitted. The elder nodded. Then why do you insist on calling one better than the other? One serves thirst, one serves cold. You have been comparing different medicines for different illnesses, and because you compare, you are poisoning your own hands. The mendicant looked at the seeker and said, "This is how the mind suffers. It compares what is not meant to be compared, and then it creates a false hierarchy, and then it tries to climb the hierarchy, and then it calls the climbing life." The seeker felt a tightness in his chest because he recognized how often he compared his own inner path to someone else's outer appearance, how often he compared his private pain to someone else's public calm, how often he compared his beginning to someone else's middle, and then punished himself for not being where he imagined others already were. "But the mind won't stop," he whispered. "It keeps producing the measuring." The mendicant nodded, and his voice became practical, like a teacher placing a tool into the student's palm. "Then you will do with comparison what you did with memory and tomorrow," he said. "You will name it, you will feel it, and you will return." "Name it," he said, "because when you name it, you stop believing it is the voice of truth. You will say, comparing, the way you say, thinking, and this simple naming is like pulling a weed up by its crown, not fully removing the root yet, but stopping it from pretending it is a flower. Feel it," he said, "because comparison always has a body sign. It tightens the throat, heats the face, compresses the chest, curls the belly, or makes the eyes restless. And when you feel it as sensation, you stop treating it as a sacred command." "Return," he said, "because the cure for comparison is presence. Comparison lives in imagined ranking. Presence lives in what your hands are doing right now, in the breath, in the actual moment that cannot be measured because it is alive." The seeker asked, "But what do I return to, Venerable One, when the mind insists, 'You are not enough'?" The mendicant's gaze softened, and he said something that sounded like an ancient answer carried across long roads. "You return to your own path," he said, "because the Buddha taught that each being has their own karma, their own conditions, their own timing, their own lessons. To measure your path against another is like measuring your breath against another's lungs. It is foolish, and it creates needless suffering." He paused, then added, "And you also return to a deeper truth, that worth is not earned by ranking. Worth is not a ladder. Worth is the simple fact of being a living being capable of awakening." Then he offered a short verse, shaped like the old recitations that settle the heart when the mind wants to compete. "Not higher, not lower, only this breath here. I learn from others. I do not become their shadow. My path is my river. Their path is their stream. I walk in the middle, awake in what is." The seeker repeated it inwardly, and as he did, he noticed the comparison thoughts still came, but they came with less authority, as if they had lost the power to appoint themselves judges. They were still visitors, but now he could see their clothes, their masks, their tricks, and seeing is already loosening. The mendicant then spoke of a deeper root beneath comparison, because the Buddha's wisdom always goes to the root, not only the leaf. Comparison, he said, is often the mind's attempt to find safety in an image. It thinks, "If I am above, I am safe," or "If I am not below, I will not be harmed." But safety built on ranking is fragile, because there will always be someone the mind believes is above, and then fear returns. So the Buddha taught a different safety, the safety of non-clinging, the safety of knowing that your value does not rise and fall with praise. The seeker asked, "How do I build that safety?" The mendicant answered, "By practicing contentment, not as dull acceptance, but as clear gratitude for what is present. Contentment does not mean you stop growing. It means you stop insulting the present while you grow. He pointed to the river again. Water does not hate itself for being water, he said. It flows. It learns the shape of the land. It does not demand to be fire. And then he gave the seeker a small practice for daily life, because a teaching that lives only by the river dies in the market. Tomorrow, he said, when you notice comparison arise, do one quiet thing. Place your hand on your chest and breathe once slowly and say inwardly, different paths. Then look at what you can actually do in that moment. One honest action, one kind word, one simple task, and do it with full attention. This is how you return from ranking to living. The seeker felt something lighten, because the practice was not about becoming a special person who never compares. It was about becoming a person who notices comparison early and refuses to let it rule. The mendicant's final words for this sixth part came as one long, gentle sentence, steady enough to carry the seeker towards sleep. Your mind has been trained to measure, he said, but you can train it to see. And when it tries to turn life into a ladder, you can step off the ladder and return to the ground of breath, because the middle way is not a race, and awakening is not a contest. It is a quiet homecoming, and the one who stops comparing discovers a peace that does not depend on being better or worse, only on being present, kind, and awake in this very moment. So if you are listening now, and your mind begins to rank, to weigh, to measure, to say, I should be more, or I am less, do not believe the judge inside you. Name the comparing, feel the tightening it creates, return to breath and body, and whisper, different paths, and let the river carry the weeds downstream, because the night is not asking you to win, it is asking you to rest, and rest grows naturally in a heart that has stopped turning life into a scoreboard. On the seventh night, the seeker arrived with a mind that seemed calmer on the surface, and yet strangely alert underneath, because even when comparison had softened, and the obvious storms of memory and tomorrow had begun to lose their sharp teeth, there remained another trouble that could appear without warning, a trouble that did not come as a single thought, but as a living feeling that swam through his inner waters and made everything look dangerous. And this trouble was fear, not always loud, not always dramatic, but clever, patient, and skilled at disguising itself as wisdom. He sat by the bank where the reeds bowed and the river kept its endless low chant, and he placed himself again in the boat of breath, cool air entering, warm air leaving, and he tried to remain as the watcher, the shore, the sky above the passing stream, and for a while he succeeded. Yet in the quiet, he began to notice a strange thing, that fear did not need real evidence to rise, it only needed possibility, and possibility was everywhere. And so the mind, like a restless fisherman, began to cast nets into the dark water, pulling up imagined disasters and holding them close to the face as if they were proof. A thought came softly at first, almost reasonable. What if something goes wrong? And then another thought came, sharper. What if you lose what you love? And then a third, colder still. What if you are not safe? And as these thoughts came, the seeker felt his body react, chest tightening, throat narrowing, belly becoming a clenched fist, as if the room had filled with smoke. And in that moment, the mind did what it had always done. It began to paint pictures, vivid scenes full of detail, because fear is an artist, and its favorite colors are urgency and dread. He saw himself failing, being rejected, losing support, being misunderstood, standing alone in a future where no one reached for him, and the pictures felt so real that his breath became shallow and his boat began to wobble, and he whispered, I thought I was learning to be free, yet here I am again, pulled by shadows. The mendicant arrived quietly, as if he had always been sitting just beyond the edge of sight, and he settled beside the seeker without a single word of judgment, allowing the fear to reveal itself fully, because fear, when denied, grows claws, but fear, when seen, often grows tired. After a long silence, the mendicant spoke, and his voice was low and steady, like a hand on a trembling shoulder. "Tonight," he said, "you have met the fish." The seeker blinked, confused. "Fish?" The mendicant pointed toward the river where faint ripples moved through the darkness, and then he spoke in a long, gentle sentence, slow enough to enter the seeker's body rather than only his mind. "Fear swims beneath the surface," he said, "and it rises when it smells food, and the food is not reality. The food is your attention. The mind throws crumbs into the water. What if, what if, what if? And fear comes to feed, and once it feeds, it grows, and once it grows, it pulls the mind toward more crumbs, until the whole night becomes a feeding." The seeker swallowed, because he recognized it. The way one fearful question multiplied into 10, the way 10 became 100, the way the mind kept offering more, as if fear were a sacred guest that must be entertained. "But fear feels important," the seeker whispered. "It feels like a warning. It feels like it is trying to protect me." The mendicant nodded, neither agreeing nor dismissing. "Yes," he said, "fear began as protection, and it has its place, for a living being must recognize danger. But the mind has forgotten the difference between true danger and imagined danger, and so it treats possibility as certainty. It treats uncertainty as threat. It treats discomfort as doom, and in this confusion, fear becomes not a guard at the gate, but a tyrant inside the house." The seeker stared at the water, and the mendicant continued. "The Buddha taught," he said, "that fear grows when the mind clings to 3 illusions. The illusion that you can control all outcomes, the illusion that you can avoid all pain, and the illusion that thoughts are always truthful. When these illusions are believed, fear becomes endless, because life is uncontrollable. Pain is part of existence, and thoughts are only movements, not commandments." The seeker felt a quiet despair rise, because part of him still wanted the old guarantee, still wanted to be told that if he practiced correctly, nothing would ever hurt him again. The mendicant seemed to sense this, and his voice became even more tender. "The path is not a promise that nothing will ever hurt," he said. "The path is a promise that you do not have to torture yourself with pain that has not arrived." He paused, then asked a question that landed like a stone in the mind and created a moment of stillness. "When fear shows you a picture," he asked, "do you notice that you become the servant of the picture?" The seeker's breath caught, because the answer was yes. When fear painted a scene, he rushed to obey it, to solve it, to escape it, to rehearse it, as if the scene were a judge speaking law. The mendicant nodded. "Then learn," he said, "the middle way with fear. Do not suppress it, and do not feed it." The seeker frowned. "If I don't feed it, isn't that suppression?" The mendicant shook his head gently. "Suppression is hatred," he said. "Suppression is pushing fear underwater with a heavy hand and pretending it is gone, while it thrashes and returns stronger. Not feeding is different. Not feeding is seeing fear clearly, acknowledging its presence, and refusing to offer it endless stories." He leaned slightly forward, and the words came like a teaching meant for midnight, when the mind is tired and easily fooled. "Fear feeds on narrative," he said, "on the mind's habit of building a whole world from one uncertain seed. So when fear rises, you must become very simple, like a monk with one bowl. You name what is happening, You return to breath, and you do not elaborate. The seeker whispered, but the mind elaborates automatically. Yes, the mendicant said, because it has practiced elaboration for years, and practice becomes habit, and habit becomes a riverbed. But the Buddha taught that a riverbed can be reshaped, slowly, by new water. Then the mendicant gave him a practice with 3 gates, ancient in its simplicity, strong enough to use in the dark when the mind wants to run. The first gate, he said, is to name the fish. When fear rises, say inwardly, "Fear is here." Not, "I am in danger," not, "This will happen," not, "This means something about me," only, "Fear is here." This is honesty without prophecy. The second gate, he said, is to feel the hook in the body. Where does fear grip you? Throat, chest, belly, eyes, hands. And can you soften one place, only one, as a sign to the body that you are not being chased in this room? The third gate, he said, is to starve the fantasy. Do not answer "what if" with more "what if." Instead, return to a single true sentence. Right now, I am here. Right now, I am breathing. If an action is needed, it will be clear in daylight. If no action is needed, your mind is only feeding fish. The seeker listened, but fear resisted, because fear loves complexity. It wants to create an entire system of emergency, and so it whispered, "But what if you miss something important?" And the seeker felt the old spinning begin. The mendicant spoke again, calm and firm. The mind will always say, "What if I miss something?" he said. And the answer is not to chase the mind into the river. The answer is to remember that true danger becomes clear by its weight in the world. Night fears are often smoke. Daylight will show what is real. The seeker asked, almost pleading, "But how can I trust that?" The mendicant looked at him with quiet compassion. "Because you have already lived it," he said. How many times has fear screamed at night and then softened by morning? How many times has the mind built a castle of dread and then, in daylight, the castle dissolved into mist? The seeker's eyes lowered because he knew the truth. Countless times. The mendicant then told a story, old as the path itself, to place the teaching into the seeker's bones. There was once, he said, a traveler who crossed a river each night to return to his home, and on one night the moon was hidden and the fog was thick, and as he stepped into the water he saw a shape moving beneath the surface, long and dark, and his mind screamed, a serpent will bite you." And his body froze, and fear painted images of poison, of pain, of death, and the traveler stood trembling, unable to move. A wise ferryman came and asked, "What do you see?" And the traveler said, "A serpent." The ferryman took a lantern and held it low over the water, and the moving shape became clear. It was not a serpent at all, but a rope carried by the current, twisting and turning, made to look alive by darkness and fear. The mendicant's voice softened. "The traveler suffered not from a serpent," he said, "but from a rope mistaken for a serpent. And the Buddha taught that many fears are like this, shapes in the mind made monstrous by darkness, and the lantern is awareness." The seeker whispered, "So awareness is the lantern." "Yes," the mendicant said, "and breath is the hand that holds it steady." Then he recited a verse, short and steady, meant to be remembered when fear tries to feed. "Fear swims up when stories fall. I do not throw more crumbs at all. One breath, one truth. This room is still. The fish grows small when I grow real." The seeker repeated the verse inwardly, and he felt something in his chest loosen, not because fear vanished, but because he stopped treating fear as a god whose demands must be obeyed. Still, the seeker asked a deeper question, because the mind, even while learning, still longs to understand its own roots. "Why?" he asked. "Does fear return even when I try to be calm?" The mendicant answered slowly, like someone laying stones to form a safe path. "Because fear is old," he said. "Because your nervous system has learned to anticipate pain. Because the mind has been rewarded for worrying. Each time you worried and nothing happened, the mind said, 'See, my worry protected us.' And it never considers that nothing might have happened anyway. Because you have used fear as a kind of control, and control is hard to release. And because life is uncertain, and uncertainty is the ocean the mind fears most." The seeker breathed, and the mendicant continued. "The middle way does not remove uncertainty," he said. "It removes the belief that uncertainty is unbearable. You learn to live with open hands. You learn to be a living being, not a machine." Then he gave the seeker a final practice for this part, something he could do even half asleep, when fear rises like a sudden wave. "When fear appears," he said, "do not ask it to leave. Simply ask it one question. Are you asking me to act, or are you asking me to imagine? If the answer is imagination, return to breath and let the wave pass. If the answer is action, write one small note for daylight and return to rest. Do not let fear steal the night by turning it into a theater." The seeker nodded, and for the first time he felt truly how gentle this path could be without becoming weak, how firm it could be without becoming harsh. He could hear fear, yes, but he did not have to build temples for it. He did not have to feed it his life. The mendicant's last words for the seventh part arrived like a long exhale, slow enough for the body to believe. "Fear will visit," he said, "because you are alive, but you do not have to invite it to stay for the whole night. You can greet it like a passing traveler, offer it a seat for one breath, and then return to what is true. This bed, this room, this body, this breath. Because the river of thoughts becomes quiet, not when you banish every fish, but when you stop feeding the water with endless stories, and instead become the calm shore that lets the current move without dragging you under." On the 8th night, the seeker came to the river, not because he expected a new teaching to strike him like lightning, but because he had begun to sense that the river was not only a place outside him, it was also a mirror of what lived within him, and a mirror, if looked into with patience, reveals not only the face, but the subtle shadows beneath the eyes, the tiredness in the brow, the hidden strain that a person carries while pretending to be fine. And this night, more than the others, he felt tired, not the simple tiredness of muscles after work, but the deeper tiredness that sits in the bones when a life has been lived too long in alertness, as if danger were always near, as if the mind had forgotten how to stand down and rest its weapons. He sat on the bank where the reeds bowed and the water moved with its ancient low chant, and he entered the boat of breath as he had been taught, cool in, warm out, and he tried to name thoughts and return without cruelty. Yet he noticed something humbling. The mind, when the body is tired, becomes louder even if nothing new has happened, and the same old thoughts that seemed manageable in daylight now felt sharp as thorns. A small memory stung more deeply. A small uncertainty grew into a storm. A small discomfort in the body became a prophecy of suffering, and the seeker, who had been learning to float, now felt as though the boat itself were heavier, as if the water had thickened into mist. He whispered, almost in shame, "Why does night do this to me? Why does everything become heavier at this hour?" And as he spoke, he realized he had asked this question many times in his life, not with words, but with the secret despair of midnight, the quiet feeling that something was wrong with him, because he could not stay calm when the world went quiet. The mendicant arrived with the patience of someone who has seen the same suffering circle through many hearts, and he sat beside the seeker in the dimness, and for a long time he said nothing, because tiredness is a kind of sacred ground and should not be trampled by too many words. Then, when the seeker's breath steadied a little, the mendicant spoke softly, and the softness itself was part of the teaching. "You have met the fog," he said. The seeker looked up. "Fog?" "Yes," the mendicant said. "The fog of fatigue, the veil that falls over the mind when the body is depleted, and under that veil every sound seems louder, every thought seems truer, every fear seems nearer, because tiredness does not only make you sleepy, it makes you vulnerable to illusion." The seeker exhaled, and in the exhale there was relief and also grief, because he realized how often he had blamed himself for what was simply exhaustion. "But why?" he asked. "Does tiredness do this? Why does it make the mind cruel and noisy?" The mendicant answered slowly, like one placing warm stones around a small fire. "Because the body and mind are not separate kingdoms," he said. "When the body is tired, the nervous system becomes sensitive, and sensitivity without rest becomes alarm. The mind then tries to protect you by scanning for danger, but scanning in the dark is imperfect, so it mistakes shadows for threats. It mistakes uncertainty for catastrophe. It mistakes a passing sensation for a verdict, and you, believing the scanning, begin to suffer." He pointed to the river where mist hovered low above the surface, a pale breath rising from water into air. "See the fog," he said. "When fog covers the river has not changed, yet your eyes cannot see the far bank, and because you cannot see, you imagine all kinds of things. Perhaps the river widens, perhaps the current grows violent, perhaps creatures move beneath the surface, and in the same way, when fatigue covers the mind, reality has not necessarily become worse, but your clarity has become thin, and in thin clarity, the mind invents." The seeker listened, and the mendicant continued, for he knew this teaching was important. Many seekers try to solve their whole life while the mind is fogged, and because it cannot see, it panics, and the panic drains the little energy left, and the fog thickens, and the night becomes an endless circle. "The Buddha taught," the mendicant said, "that sometimes the most spiritual act is not more thinking, but more rest, because a mind without rest is like a lamp without oil. Its flame flickers, it smokes, it casts frightening shadows, and the person mistakes shadows for reality." The seeker felt tears rise because he recognized himself in that image, a lamp that had been burning too long. "But how?" he asked. "Do I rest the mind when the mind is the thing that keeps me awake?" The mendicant's voice became gentle and practical, as if he were handing the seeker a simple bowl of water and saying, "Drink." "You do not rest the mind by arguing with it," he said. "You rest the mind by resting the body, and you rest the body by sending it the message it has been missing, that in this moment, you are safe enough to soften." The seeker frowned. "But my mind says I am not safe." The mendicant nodded. "Yes, the fog will say many things. Do not treat fog as a judge. Treat it as weather." Then he offered a teaching that sounded ancient, as if it had been whispered by countless monks to countless sleepless travelers. "In the hour of fatigue, do not ask the mind to become wise. Ask the body to become calm." He taught the seeker the first rite of night rest, a sequence so simple that pride would call it childish, yet so effective that the nervous system would recognize it as truth. "Begin," he said, "with the ground. Feel the weight of your body where it meets earth or bed. let your attention rest on heaviness. Heaviness is the language of safety. Then soften 3 gates: the jaw, the shoulders, the belly. You do not have to soften everything. Soften 1 finger's width. Then lengthen the exhale, not by forcing air out like punishment, but by inviting the breath to leave slowly, like a guest departing peacefully. The seeker tried, and at first it felt artificial because he was used to living in tension, and tension feels normal when it has been worn for years. But after a few slow exhales, he noticed the smallest change. The heart rate lowered a fraction, the chest loosened a fraction. The inner noise, though still present, lost a little of its sharpness, as if the mind's blades had been wrapped in cloth. The mendicant said, "Yes, this is how fog thins, not by fighting the river, but by warming the body back into clarity." The seeker whispered, "But the thoughts keep coming." The mendicant answered, "Thoughts will come, especially in fatigue, because the mind tries to solve what it cannot solve, and it thinks solving will create safety. So you must give the mind a different task, a simpler task, a holy task, to count the breath." He taught the seeker a practice used by quiet monasteries in the hour before dawn. On the inhale, he said, think 1. On the exhale, think 1, then 2 and 2. Continue up to 10, and then begin again at 1. If you lose count, do not punish yourself. Return to 1 as you would return to a shrine, gently, faithfully, without anger. The seeker tried, and soon he discovered the first miracle of counting, that it gathered the mind's scattered horses into one stable. The thoughts still called from the distance, but the mind had a rope now, and the rope was not harsh. It was soft, braided from attention. The mendicant then offered another practice for nights, when counting felt difficult, a practice that used the senses as anchors, because the senses live in the present and do not easily travel to tomorrow. "Listen," he said, "to the sound of the river. Do not interpret it. Do not turn it into a story. Just receive it as sound. Then feel the air on your skin. Then feel the warmth inside your hands. If thoughts rise, let them rise like birds and return to sound, to skin, to warmth. This is how you become present without strain." The seeker did this, and for a moment he experienced something rare. The mind did not become silent, but it became less important, because the senses were like lamps placed around the room, and in lamplight, the shadows could no longer pretend to be monsters. The mendicant said, "In fatigue, the mind loves to speak in extremes. It says, 'I will never be okay. This will always be like this. I am broken,' because extremes are simple, and the tired mind wants simplicity. But the Buddha taught you not to believe extremes, because life is not an extreme. It is a changing stream." He leaned slightly forward, and his words came as a warning and a comfort together. So when the tired mind says, "Always," you answer, "Now." When it says, "Never," you answer, "This breath." When it says, "Hopeless," you answer, "Return." You do not argue in long speeches. You answer with small truths, because small truths are easier for a tired nervous system to hold. Then he offered a verse, short and steady, shaped like an ancient lullaby for the mind. "When fog is thick and night grows loud, I do not follow every cloud. Jaw soft, belly warm, exhale slow and long. The river still flows, but fear grows wrong." The seeker repeated it inwardly, and the verse felt like a hand moving slowly across his forehead. Yet the seeker asked one more question, because there was still a quiet shame in him that wanted to be addressed, the shame of not being strong enough to stay calm when tired. "Venerable One," he said, "is it weakness that I become anxious at night?" The The mendicant looked at him with such kindness that the seeker almost could not hold his gaze. "It is not weakness," he said. "It is biology. It is habit. It is the body asking for gentleness." The Buddha did not condemn the body for being a body. He honored it as the vehicle of awakening. Treat your tiredness not as a failure, but as a bell reminding you to soften. He paused, then added, "Many people make the mistake of trying to use willpower against fatigue, but willpower is a flame, and fatigue is a wind. When wind is strong, you protect the flame with a lantern. The lantern is kindness. The lantern is a simple practice. The lantern is letting the night be for rest." The seeker felt the truth of that settle into him like warm tea into an empty stomach. The mendicant offered one last instruction, meant for the real world beyond the riverbank, because teachings that cannot be carried into ordinary life are like boats tied forever to the shore. "In the day," he said, "you will care for the causes of night fog. You will not treat rest as a luxury. You will feed the body gently. You will stop pouring endless stimulation into the mind before sleep. You will keep your evenings quieter, because the mind cannot drink noise all day and expect silence at midnight. And when the fog still comes, as it sometimes will, you will not panic. You will do the simple rites: ground, soften, exhale, count, return." The river continued its low chant, and the mist above it drifted like pale breath, and the seeker realized that the fog was not an enemy either. It was simply a condition, and conditions change, and the wise do not build their identity from conditions. And the mendicant's final words for this 8th part came like a long exhale, steady enough to carry the seeker towards sleep. "When the night makes everything louder," he said, "do not believe the volume. Believe the breath. The mind in fatigue is a storyteller in a dark room. It will invent, but you are not required to follow every invention. Let the body become calm. Let the exhale become long. Let the counting gather you. Let the senses anchor you, and you will see that even in fog there is a path, and the path is simple. Soften, return, soften, return, until the river of thoughts becomes not a battlefield, but a lullaby that carries you gently into rest." On the 9th night, the seeker arrived at the river as one arrives at a familiar temple after many pilgrimages, no longer surprised by the shape of the path, no longer offended by the darkness, no longer demanding that the water behave according to his wishes, but carrying a quieter strength that had been growing in him without noise, the strength of repetition, the strength of returning, the strength of learning that the mind does not become gentle by being threatened. It becomes gentle by being understood. And yet even with this strength, there remained a secret longing in him, a longing he almost feared to confess, because it sounded like greed disguised as spirituality. He wanted to know what it felt like when the inner noise truly softened, when the river of thoughts stopped throwing foam into his face, when the mind, if only for a few breaths, became clear enough that he could taste silence, not as an absence, but as a presence. The night was deep, and the sky wore a low veil of clouds, and the stars were faint like distant incense, and the river moved with its ancient voice, steady and indifferent, and the reeds bowed as they always did, and the seeker sat on the bank and entered his boat of breath, cool air entering, warm air leaving, without rushing, without trying to force a result. And this time, he did not begin by fighting thoughts or even naming them with urgency. He began by honoring the body, because he had learned in the fog of fatigue that the body is the first doorway into peace. He felt the weight of himself on the earth. He softened the jaw as if loosening an old vow of tension. He released the shoulders as if setting down a burden he had carried since childhood. He let the belly become a little warm and round rather than tight and guarded, and he lengthened the exhale like a slow prayer offered to the nervous system. Thoughts came, of course, because thoughts come like wind comes, like birds come, like waves come, and he did not pretend otherwise. A memory flickered, a plan attempted to rise, a fear tried to paint a picture, a comparison tried to measure his practice, and he named them gently. Memory, future, fear, comparing, not with disdain, not with panic, but with the simple honesty of a man pointing at clouds and saying, "Cloud." And then he returned to the breath, again and again, not as labor, but as devotion, because he had begun to understand that devotion is not always worship of something outside you. Devotion is also the quiet decision to return to what is real. Minutes passed, perhaps many, perhaps few, because in the nighttime becomes soft and strange, and the river kept its low chant, and then something subtle began to happen. Not a sudden silence like a door slammed shut, not a magical emptiness, but a thinning, as if the water that had been muddy was beginning to settle. Thoughts still rose, but they rose farther away, like voices heard from the other side of the valley rather than inside the skull, and the seeker felt a small space open behind his thoughts, a space he had not created, a space that had been there all along, and in that space there was a quietness that did not demand effort. He noticed it, and the instant he noticed it, a thought tried to seize it, because the mind loves to possess even peace, and the thought said, "Ah, finally, now keep it, don't lose it, hold it." And the seeker felt the boat wobble, because the desire to hold silence is itself a ripple, and ripples disturb the surface. He almost fell into that old habit, grabbing for an experience, turning it into a trophy, demanding that the next moment be identical. Yet he caught himself, and in catching himself, he learned something even deeper, that silence cannot be held, it can only be allowed. The mendicant arrived then, quietly as always, and sat beside him without speaking, as if he too were listening to the thinning of the river, and for a long time they shared the same stillness without making it into a performance. The seeker felt grateful and also afraid, because he sensed he was standing at a threshold, and thresholds awaken strange feelings, hope and fear together, because the mind does not trust what it has not controlled. At last, the mendicant spoke, and his voice was soft enough not to break the new quiet. "You have reached the threshold," he said. The seeker barely moved his lips. "The threshold?" "The threshold of silence," the mendicant replied. "The place where the river is still a river, but the mind stops wrestling it, and because the wrestling stops, the water clears. This is not a miracle given from outside. It is the natural result of not feeding disturbance." The seeker whispered, "But it feels fragile. If I look at it, it shakes. If I want it, it slips. If I fear losing it, it vanishes." The mendicant nodded, as if the seeker had spoken the exact lesson the threshold was designed to teach. "Yes," he said, "because silence is not an object. It is the mind's natural state when it is not clinging and not pushing. The moment you turn it into an object, something to possess, you return to clinging, and the river stirs. The moment you fear losing it, you return to pushing, and the river stirs. So the middle way here is very delicate. You must learn to rest without grasping." The seeker asked, "How do I do that, Venerable One, when the mind automatically grasps?" The mendicant's answer came as one long sentence, slow and ancient, like something spoken under starlight for centuries. "You do it the way you hold a sleeping child," he said. "Not squeezing, not dropping, not shaking the child awake to prove it is real, but holding with a gentle steadiness that does not demand anything from the child. You let silence come, and if it comes, you do not celebrate loudly, and if it goes, you do not mourn violently. You remain faithful to the breath and to the simple returning, because the one who keeps returning without craving eventually finds that silence returns by itself, like a deer returning to a quiet clearing when hunters stop walking there. The seeker felt the truth of this in his body, because he could feel how even a small tightening in the belly, one subtle command, "Stay," made the mind stir. He could feel how softness, not force, allowed the quiet to remain. The mendicant then told him what many never understand, that there are different kinds of silence, and not all are wise. Some silence, he said, is only numbness, the shutting down of feeling. Some silence is suppression, the mind pushing thoughts underwater until they thrash. Some silence is exhaustion, the body too depleted to think. But the silence you are tasting now is different. This silence is clarity. It is wakeful. It is gentle, and it has the flavor of awareness. The seeker listened, and the mendicant continued. The Buddha taught, he said, that awareness is like the sky. Clouds pass, winds pass, birds pass, yet the sky remains open. When you rest as awareness, you do not need to eliminate thought. You only need to stop following it. And when you stop following, the mind's noise loses fuel, and what remains is not emptiness, but spaciousness. The seeker whispered, "So the goal is not to stop thoughts." The mendicant nodded. Yes, the goal is to stop drowning in them. Silence is a side effect of non-clinging, not a prize you win. He then offered the seeker a subtle practice, meant exactly for the threshold, because at the threshold, the mind is most likely to sabotage itself by becoming greedy. When you notice quiet, he said, do not stare at it like a man staring at a rare jewel, because staring is a kind of grasping. Instead, widen your attention gently, as if listening to the whole valley at once. The sound of water, the feeling of breath, the weight of the body, the softness behind the eyes. Let awareness be wide, and in wide awareness, quiet can live without being trapped. The seeker tried, and he felt how widening attention made everything less tense. The mind was no longer a narrow fist, it was an open palm, and in an open palm, even a delicate thing can rest. The mendicant said, "This is why the Buddha praised the middle way. Narrowness creates suffering, openness allows rest." Then he spoke of another secret at the threshold, that silence often arrives not when you chase it, but when you give up the need to be different from what you are. People think, he said, that silence belongs to holy people and not to them, and this belief creates striving. Striving creates tension. Tension creates noise. But if you sit as you are, without demanding a new identity, the mind relaxes, and when the mind relaxes, quiet appears as naturally as night appears when the sun stops insisting on being present. The seeker's eyes grew wet because he had spent so much of his life trying to become a different person in order to deserve peace, and now he was being told that peace is not earned by becoming someone else. It is revealed when you stop fighting who you are. The mendicant then recited a verse, and the verse was shaped like the old chants meant to be carried through generations. Simple enough for a tired mind, deep enough for a lifetime. Silence is not mine. I do not hold it. Noise is not me. I do not fear it. Breath is the bridge, awareness the shore. I rest in the middle and need nothing more. The seeker repeated it inwardly, and the river seemed to agree, because its voice felt less like disturbance now and more like a cradle, steady, rhythmic, not asking him to solve anything, only asking him to be here. He asked the mendicant a final question, because the threshold, while sweet, also awakens doubt. "What if," he whispered, "I lose this tomorrow? What if I return to noise? What if this is only a temporary mercy?" The mendicant looked at him with a calm that did not promise perfection, and because it did not promise perfection, it felt believable. "You will return to noise," he said, "because you are human, and life has waves, and the mind has habits. But the difference is this: you have now tasted the threshold, so you know it exists, and you know the way back, and each time you return, the path becomes more familiar, and the mind learns, slowly, that it does not have to live in alarm." He paused, then added, "The Buddha did not build awakening on one perfect night. He built it on endless gentle returns." The seeker sat quietly, and the night wrapped around him like a dark robe, and the river's voice became softer in his perception, not because the water changed, but because his relationship to it changed. He was no longer a man trying to stop water. He was a man learning to float. And the mendicant's final words for this ninth part arrived like a slow, warm exhale meant to carry the seeker towards sleep. "Do not chase silence," he said. "Live the conditions that allow silence, softness in the body, honesty in naming, kindness in returning, openness in awareness. Then, whether the mind is noisy or quiet, you will be steady, because steadiness does not depend on the river's surface. It depends on the shore within you, the quiet presence that can sit beside any current and not be swept away." Напиши 10. И я продолжу part 10. The practice of watching. I am the bank, not the river, and how to keep this wisdom in daily life. And part 10. The practice of watching. I am the bank, not the river. On the 10th night, the seeker came to the river with a different kind of longing. Not the sharp longing that demands an experience, but the sober longing that asks for stability. Because he had tasted the threshold of silence, and he had felt how quickly the mind could try to possess it, how greed could slip into spirituality like a thief wearing sacred robes. And he understood now that the true treasure was not silence itself, but the capacity to remain steady whether silence appeared or not. He did not want a perfect night. He wanted a way of living that did not collapse when the world became loud, a way of being that did not depend on the mind's moods, a way of resting that could exist even in the middle of ordinary days, among voices and duties and disappointments. The river moved as it always did, indifferent and faithful, and the reeds bowed as they always did, and the sky carried its dim veil of cloud and faint star salt, and he sat on the bank and entered his boat of breath, cool air entering, warm air leaving, without hurry, because he had begun to understand that hurry is one of the mind's hidden addictions, a subtle form of fear that says, "If I do not arrive quickly, I will lose something." And the path of the Buddha does not feed that addiction. It starves it gently. Thoughts came as they always came, yet they came now with less authority, not because the seeker had become a different creature, but because he had begun to recognize the difference between a thought and a command, between an appearance and a reality, between a ripple and the whole river. He named them softly: planning, remembering, worrying, and returned to breath. And for a while he floated, and then, like an old habit returning to test a new strength, the mind began to tug at him with a familiar trick. It tried to make him believe that the thoughts were him, that the river was his identity, that whatever moved inside his head must be the truth of who he was. A thought arrived and said, "You are anxious." Another added, "You are weak." Another whispered, "You are broken." And the seeker felt the old sting in his chest, because those sentences were not only thoughts, They were labels, and labels are heavy stones that people place on their own backs. And he noticed how quickly the body responded, shoulders tightening, throat narrowing, as if the label had become a physical weight. And he understood that this was the true danger, not the thought itself, but the mind's habit of turning thought into self. He whispered to himself, almost pleading, "If I am not these thoughts, then what am I?" And the question itself stirred the water, because questions can be holy, but questions can also be nets that the mind throws into the river to catch certainty. The mendicant arrived, quiet as always, and sat beside the seeker with the calm of someone who has stopped trying to carve identity out of passing weather. And for a long time he did not speak, because he wanted the seeker to feel the question, to taste it fully, to see how the mind reaches for an answer, the way a drowning person reaches for a floating plank, believing that if it can define itself, it will be safe. At last, the mendicant spoke, and his voice was low and ancient, like words carried by many nights. "You are asking," he said, "the right question, but the mind will try to answer it in the wrong way." The seeker turned slightly, listening. "The mind will answer with a story," the mendicant continued, "and the story will be made of memories, fears, comparisons, successes, failures, hopes, wounds. The story will say, 'I am this kind of person,' and it will be a box, and then you will live inside that box and suffer when life does not fit." But the Buddha pointed to something simpler and freer. "You are the one who knows." The seeker frowned. "The one who knows?" "Yes," the mendicant said. "The one who knows the breath, the one who knows the thought, the one who knows the sensation, the one who knows the urge, the one who knows the story. Thoughts are known. Sensations are known. Even the desire to define yourself is known. So you are not what is known. You are the knowing." The seeker felt the words land like a soft stone in still water, creating ripples that were not disturbance but understanding, and he whispered, "But the knowing feels invisible." The mendicant nodded. "It is invisible because it is closer than sight," he said. "It is the sky that does not need to announce itself." The Buddha taught that when you rest as awareness, you become like the bank of a river. Water moves, yes, but the bank does not get carried away. He pointed at the river's edge where the earth held the water's boundary, steady and quiet, receiving wave after wave without being swallowed. "Do you see?" he asked. "The bank does not fight the river. The bank does not chase the river. The bank simply remains, and because it remains, the river can pass. This is your practice now, to become the bank." The seeker asked, "How do I become the bank, Venerable One, when thoughts feel so personal?" The mendicant's voice became practical, like a teacher giving a tool that can be used in the market, not only by the river at night. "You become the bank," he said, "by learning to watch without grabbing and without pushing." And the Buddha gave a simple method: notice, name, allow, return. He lifted one finger, as if marking the steps in the air. "Notice," he said, "the moment a thought arises, not after it has dragged you through 10 scenes, but at its birth, like noticing a ripple the moment it touches the surface. Name," he said, "what it is: planning, remembering, judging, fear, craving, comparing. Naming is not condemnation, it is clarity. When you name a thing, you stop worshiping it as mystery. Allow," he said, "the thought to exist without wrestling. Allow is the middle way between suppression and obedience. You do not drown the thought, and you do not serve it. You let it float. Return," he said, "to the breath, to the body, to the sound of water, to to what is real, not as punishment for wandering, but as homecoming. The seeker listened and tried, and a thought came. You will never keep this practice. He noticed it. He named it. Fear. He allowed it to be there, like a cloud. He returned to breath. The thought remained for a moment, then thinned. Another thought came. You are doing it wrong. He noticed it. Named. Judging. Allowed. Returned. The tightness softened. Another. Remember what happened years ago. He noticed. Named. Memory. Allowed. Returned. The memory's hook loosened slightly, and the seeker realized with astonishment that the practice was not dramatic. It was ordinary, like sweeping a floor again and again, and yet in its ordinariness, it was powerful, because it trained the mind away from possession and toward freedom. Still, the seeker asked, "What about the days, Venerable One? At night I can sit quietly, but in the day I have work, people, noise, messages, demands, and the river moves faster then. How do I watch in the middle of all that?" The mendicant smiled gently, because this question was the doorway from temple practice to life practice. The Buddha did not teach only for caves and forests, he said. He taught for kitchens, for roads, for marketplaces, for family life, for the ordinary mind caught in ordinary trouble. So you will bring the bank into the day in small ways. He then offered the seeker a set of small rituals that sounded almost too simple to be spiritual, and yet the Buddha's path has always been built from smallness, because smallness repeated becomes transformation. In the morning, he said, before you touch the world, touch the breath for 3 long exhales. Let the body know. We begin from the middle. Before you speak, he said, feel 1 breath in the belly. 1 breath is enough to prevent many fires. Before you answer a message, he said, notice if the mind is tight. If it is tight, soften one place. Do not let tightness write your words. When you walk, he said, feel your feet. If you can feel your feet, the mind cannot completely vanish into story. When you eat, he said, taste 1 bite fully. This trains presence better than many long speeches. And when you notice you have been swept away, he said, do not punish yourself with shame. Simply return. Return is the whole path. The seeker felt something inside him relax, because he had imagined spiritual practice had to be dramatic, long, perfect. And now he was being given something that could fit inside a life. A breath, a footstep, a bite, a pause. But the seeker still carried a deeper fear. The fear that if he stopped identifying with his thoughts, he would become empty, meaningless, without direction. He asked, if I am the bank and thoughts are the river, then who decides what I do? Who chooses how I live? The mendicant answered slowly, because this was subtle, and subtle things must be carried like fragile bowls. Awareness does not make you passive, he said. Awareness makes you free to choose. When you are lost in thought, you react. When you are the bank, you can respond. The Buddha taught that wisdom is not the absence of action. It is action born from clarity. He continued, so you will still plan, but you will plan without panic. You will still remember, but you will remember without drowning. You will still care, but you will care without clenching. And because you are not enslaved by every thought, the actions you take will become more skillful, more kind, more true. The mendicant then spoke of the most common trap at this stage, the mind's desire to become a spiritual person, an identity built from calmness, and how that identity becomes another stone in the river. Be careful, he said, of turning the bank into a badge. The moment you say, I am a calm person now, pride will rise. The moment you say, I should never be anxious again, shame will rise. Both pride and shame are currents that pull. The middle way is to practice without making a statue of yourself. Then he recited a verse, and it sounded like the old chants meant for the tired mind, steady and plain, not decorated. River may speak, and waves may roar. I am the bank, I am the shore. I notice, I name, I let it be. I come back home to breath in me. The seeker repeated it inwardly, and the verse felt like a rope tied gently around his attention. At last, the mendicant offered the seeker the deepest instruction of watching, the one that changes not only nights, but whole lives. When you watch, he said, watch with kindness. Watching with coldness becomes judgment. Watching with impatience becomes pressure. But watching with kindness becomes healing. So if you catch yourself swept away, do not scold yourself. Smile inwardly as you would smile at a child who wandered in a garden, and guide yourself back. The Buddha's compassion was not only for others, it was also for the mind learning to be free. The river continued its low chant, and the seeker felt that chant now less like noise and more like teaching, because the teaching was not hidden in special words. It was hidden in the simple truth of flowing. Everything passes, everything changes, and the one who clings suffers, while the one who watches becomes spacious. And the mendicant's final words for the 10th part came like a long exhale that made the world feel safe enough to sleep. Do not ask the river to stop, he said. Learn the bank. The bank is steady presence. The bank is the breath. The bank is the body. The bank is the gentle returning. If you become the bank, then whether thoughts are few or many, your heart will not drown, and the night will no longer be a battlefield. It will be a place where the river can sing, and you can rest, quietly awake, quietly free. On the 11th night, the seeker came to the river with a heart that had grown quieter in certain ways, and yet more honest in others, because the deeper a person goes into practice, the less they can hide from themselves. And he had begun to see a truth that was both simple and difficult, that the greatest obstacle on the path was not always fear, not always memory, not always tomorrow, but the secret harshness with which he treated his own wandering, the inner voice that scolded him for being human, the silent whip that cracked each time he lost focus, each time he was pulled downstream, each time the river of thoughts behaved like a river instead of like the still pond he demanded. He sat on the bank where the reeds bowed and the water spoke its endless low chant, and he entered the boat of breath, cool in, warm out, and for a while he watched as the bank, steady and wide, allowing thoughts to pass like clouds. But then the mind, subtle as a snake in grass, produced a familiar accusation. You should be better by now. The seeker felt his chest tighten, not from fear of the world, but from fear of his own imperfection, and the accusation multiplied. Other people can do this. Why can't you? You are failing. You are wasting time. You are weak. And the voice was so convincing that he almost believed it was truth, almost believed it was discipline, almost believed it was the path itself. He whispered bitterly, "Even when I practice, I suffer." And in that bitterness, the river became noisy again, because bitterness is another stone. The mendicant arrived as he always did, quiet as a lamp protected from wind, and he sat beside the seeker without asking for explanations, for he knew the mind's harshness well. He had seen it in kings and beggars, in mothers and soldiers, in scholars and farmers, in those who appeared confident and those who appeared broken, because the mind's cruelty toward itself is one of the most common forms of human suffering, and it hides behind many masks, even behind the mask of self-improvement. For a long time, the mendicant said nothing, and the silence felt like a teaching already, because it showed the seeker that a presence can witness struggle without adding judgment. Then, when the seeker's breath softened slightly, the mendicant spoke, and his voice was low, patient, and unmistakably kind. "You are trying to build a path with stones that cut your feet," he said. The seeker looked up, confused, and the mendicant continued in one long, steady sentence, as if he were laying down a soft cloth over the sharp places. "Your practice is good," he said. "Your returning is real. Your watching is growing. But you keep poisoning the return by punishing yourself for wandering. And the Buddha did not teach punishment as a doorway to freedom. He taught a discipline that is gentle, steady, and faithful, because the mind cannot be healed by violence from within." The seeker swallowed, because he had always believed that harshness was necessary, that without it he would become careless, that without it he would never improve. And he whispered, "But if I am not strict, I will fall into laziness. I will drift. I will stop practicing." The mendicant nodded slowly, as if honoring the fear behind the question. "Yes," he said, "this is the mind's old bargain. It says, hurt yourself into goodness." But the Buddha offered a different way, a middle way, where discipline is not a whip, but a lamp. A whip creates obedience and resentment, while a lamp creates clarity and trust. The seeker asked, "What is gentle discipline then? How is it different from being soft and careless?" The mendicant pointed toward the river, where the current flowed around stones without hatred, without praise, simply moving, steady, patient, faithful to gravity and time. "Gentle discipline," he said, "is the discipline of return. It is not the discipline of perfection. Perfection is an idol the mind worships. Return is a practice the heart can actually keep." He continued, "To be careless is to forget and never come back. To be harsh is to forget and come back with a knife. Gentle discipline is to forget and come back with open hands again and again, until coming back becomes your nature." The seeker felt something open in him, because he could see how often he returned with a knife. The mendicant then told him an old story, quiet and plain, meant to settle into the bones rather than excite the mind. "There was once a young monk," he said, "who was assigned to keep the temple courtyard clean, and each morning before dawn he swept the stone path from gate to hall, and he swept carefully, because he believed holiness meant leaving no trace. But the courtyard was surrounded by trees, and the trees dropped leaves endlessly, and the young monk grew angry, because his work never stayed finished. One morning he stormed to his teacher and said, 'I sweep, and still the leaves return. What is the use of effort if the courtyard never stays clean?' The teacher looked at him gently and asked, 'When you sweep, does the courtyard become cleaner?' The young monk said, 'Yes, for a while.' 'And when it becomes cleaner,' the teacher asked, 'do people walk more easily?' 'Yes,' the young monk admitted. Then, the teacher said, 'Your work is not to create a courtyard where leaves never fall. Your work is to sweep.' The mendicant looked at the seeker and said, 'This is your mind. Leaves will fall. Thoughts will come. The work is to return.' The seeker listened, and the mendicant went deeper, because he knew the true wound was not the wandering, but the shame. 'Your harsh voice,' he said, 'is trying to motivate you by fear, by humiliation, by threat. It says, if I do not attack you, you will not move.' But the Buddha taught that fear is not a stable fuel. It burns hot, and then it burns out, leaving ash, and the person becomes exhausted and bitter. Gentle discipline uses a different fuel, intention." The seeker asked, "Intention?" "Yes," the mendicant said, "the quiet intention to be awake, to be kind, to be free from needless suffering. Intention is steady like a candle in a lantern. It does not need to scream. Then he taught the seeker how to return without punishment, in a way that could be practiced in the middle of a stormy mind. When you notice you wandered, he said, do not say, I failed. Say, I noticed. Noticing is success. Noticing is awakening in miniature. The seeker frowned because it sounded too forgiving. The mendicant continued, the moment you notice, you are already back on the bank. From that bank, you do 3 small things. You soften the body, you offer one kind phrase, and you return to breath. The seeker asked, what kind phrase? The mendicant answered, any phrase that brings you back without cruelty. You may say, it's okay, return, or gentle, now, or breathing. The words are not magic, they are a tone. You are teaching the nervous system that waking up is safe, not shameful. The seeker tried it. A thought had dragged him into a scene of tomorrow. He noticed. He softened his jaw slightly. He whispered inwardly, gentle, now. And he returned to breath. The scene did not vanish instantly, but it loosened, and the return felt less like defeat and more like guidance. The mendicant said, do you feel the difference? Harsh return tightens, gentle return opens. Tightness feeds noise, openness feeds quiet. The seeker nodded slowly, and the mendicant continued, because gentle discipline is not only kindness, it is also structure, and structure is compassion when it prevents unnecessary suffering. Gentle discipline, he said, also means you practice in a way that is sustainable. You do not demand heroic effort every night and then collapse for a week. You choose a small vow you can keep, because the Buddha taught that steady practice shapes the mind more than sudden intensity. He offered examples, each one simple enough to be real. Perhaps, he said, your vow is 5 minutes of breath watching before sleep. Perhaps your vow is 3 long exhales when you lie down. Perhaps your vow is one kind phrase each time you return. These are not small. These are seeds, and seeds, when watered daily, become forests. The seeker listened, and the mendicant spoke of the mind's most common trick, turning discipline into self-image, making practice into a reason to feel superior on good nights and ashamed on bad nights. Be careful, he said, not to build a new identity from practice. The mind will say, I am a disciplined person. And then when you have a restless night, it will say, I am not. And you will suffer twice, first from restlessness, then from shame. The middle way is to practice without making practice into a throne. The seeker asked quietly, but how do I keep practicing when I feel discouraged? When it seems like I return 1,000 times and still the mind wanders? The mendicant's eyes softened, and his answer came like a slow river sentence meant to soothe the weary heart. Because the practice is not measured by how few times you wander, he said. It is measured by how you return. Each return is a repetition, and repetition is training. You do not become skilled at an instrument by one perfect song. You become skilled by touching the strings every day, listening, adjusting, returning to the note. Then he recited a short verse, shaped like an old chant that could be remembered in the half-sleep hour. Leaf falls down, I sweep once more. Mind drifts out, I come to shore. Not with a whip, not with a threat. Gentle return is how I rest. The seeker repeated it inwardly, and the verse felt like a soft belt around his scattered attention, holding him without choking him. The mendicant then offered a deeper teaching, the kind that changes the way a person speaks to themselves forever, if they dare to believe it. The one who punishes themselves, he said, is still clinging to an image of who they should be. Punishment is often pride in disguise, because it says, I should be above human wandering. But the Buddha did not teach you to be above being human. He taught you to be awake within being human. The seeker felt the truth sting gently because he recognized the pride, the hidden demand to be flawless. And if you must be strict, the mendicant added, be strict about one thing only. Do not abandon yourself. That is the only strictness worth keeping. Do not abandon yourself to shame. Do not abandon yourself to hatred. Do not abandon yourself to the belief that you are unworthy of calm. Keep returning. That is discipline. The river continued its low chant, and the seeker realized that the water did not insult itself for moving. It simply moved, and perhaps he too could learn to move through thoughts without insulting himself for having them. He asked one last question, because the mind, even when learning, wants a promise. Will gentle discipline truly change me? He whispered. The mendicant answered with calm certainty that did not sound like a guarantee, but like a natural law. Yes, he said, because the mind becomes what it repeats. If you repeat harshness, harshness becomes your inner climate. If you repeat gentle returning becomes your inner climate. And when gentleness becomes your climate, the river of thoughts will still flow, but it will not flood you, because you will not be fighting yourself in the dark. He paused, then offered the final blessing of the 11th night, a sentence meant to carry the seeker towards sleep, like a boat carried by calmer water. Tonight, he said, do not demand a perfect mind. Demand only this, that each time you wake up inside a thought, you return without cruelty. Let your discipline be a kindness you can keep. Let your practice be a home you can return to. And in this simple faithfulness, night after night, the mind will learn what it has forgotten. That peace grows best in a heart that stops beating itself for being alive. On the 12th night, the seeker came to the river with a tenderness he had not known he possessed, a tenderness that felt unfamiliar in his own chest, as if it had belonged to someone else and had only now returned home. Because after learning the art of gentle discipline, he could no longer ignore a deeper truth, that his greatest exhaustion had not come only from thoughts and fears, but from the secret war he had fought against himself for years. The war of constant inner correction, constant inner condemnation, constant inner pressure to be someone else, to feel something else, to be calm all the time, to be strong all the time, to be pure all the time. And he began to see, with a clarity that was both painful and liberating, that he had spent so much energy trying to defeat his own humanity that he had almost forgotten what it meant to befriend it. He sat by the bank where reeds bowed and the river spoke its ancient low chant, and he entered the boat of breath, cool in, warm out, and he noticed that the mind still produced thoughts, still offered stories, still cast images into the dark, but something had shifted. The thoughts no longer felt like enemies. They felt like signals, like winds, like weather patterns. And the one thing that still threatened him was not the presence of thought, but the tone in which he met it. When he met it with harshness, everything tightened, and when he met it with kindness, everything softened, and the softening itself felt like a door opening. The mendicant arrived quietly and sat beside him, and the seeker did not even feel the need to speak at first, because there are moments on the path when words feel like unnecessary decorations. Yet after a long silence, the seeker whispered, "Venerable One, why is kindness so difficult, even when I want it? Why do I treat myself like a creature that must be controlled, not cared for?" The mendicant looked at him with eyes that held no surprise, only understanding, and he answered slowly, as if laying a warm cloth over the seeker's questions. "Because you have learned," he said, to believe that harshness makes you safe. You have learned that love is earned, that worth is proved, that mistakes are dangerous, that weakness invites harm. And so you built an inner guard who never sleeps, a guard who shouts, who criticizes, who pushes, because it thinks pushing will keep you from being hurt again. The seeker felt a tremor move through his chest because he recognized this guard, the inner voice that claimed to be discipline, but tasted like fear. The mendicant continued, "But the Buddha taught that fear is not cured by more fear. Fear is cured by understanding and by compassion, because compassion is not softness in the sense of weakness. Compassion is softness in the sense of truth." The seeker frowned. "Truth?" "Yes," the mendicant said. "The truth that you are a living being, subject to conditions, subject to change, subject to fatigue, subject to emotion, subject to mistakes. To be compassionate is to stop demanding that a living being behave like a machine." The seeker lowered his gaze, and the mendicant spoke as if addressing the hidden wound beneath everything. "Shame. Most people," he said, "carry a silent belief. Something is wrong with me. And from that belief, they live as if they must repair themselves through punishment. But the Buddha's path begins with a different recognition. Suffering exists. And because suffering exists, compassion is needed. This is not a judgment of your worth. It is simply a clear seeing of the human condition. The seeker felt tears rise because the sentence, "Something is wrong with me," had been his secret prayer for years, even when he smiled in public. He whispered, "If something isn't wrong with me, then why do I suffer so much?" The mendicant's answer came in one long stream, steady enough to carry the seeker's trembling. "You suffer," he said, "because the mind clings and pushes, because it wants control, because it fears loss, because it believes stories, because it carries old wounds, because it has learned habits that were formed under pressure. And none of this means you are broken. It means you are conditioned. And what is conditioned can be softened." The seeker breathed, and the mendicant pointed toward the river, where the water flowed around stones without hatred. "The river does not say, 'I am wrong for having currents,'" he said. "It flows. It meets stones. It makes swirls. It clears again. In the same way, your mind is allowed to have movements. The question is not whether movements exist. The question is whether you will punish yourself for them." The seeker whispered, "How do I stop punishing?" The mendicant answered, "By ending the inner war with compassion. Compassion is the ceasefire. Compassion is the laying down of weapons." Then he taught the seeker a practice that the Buddha praised greatly, the practice of metta, loving kindness, not as a sweet decoration, not as sentimental poetry, but as a disciplined training of the heart. "Most people think," the mendicant said, "that kindness is a feeling that must appear naturally, and if it does not appear, they believe they cannot practice it. But the Buddha taught kindness as a practice, like training the hands to write. You do not wait for the perfect mood to practice. You practice, and the mood changes." He guided the seeker gently. "Tonight," he said, "offer kindness first to yourself, because you are the one you have been fighting. Place a hand on your chest, where the heart lives, and say inwardly 4 phrases, slowly, as if you were feeding warm soup to someone who has been cold for a long time." The seeker placed his hand on his chest, and the mendicant spoke the phrases like ancient medicine. "May I be safe. May I be peaceful. May I be free from needless suffering. May I rest." The seeker repeated them inwardly, and at first the phrases felt awkward, Because the mind that has lived in harshness does not trust kindness. It suspects kindness is a trick, or weakness, or indulgence. Yet as he repeated, something softened in the belly, something loosened in the throat, and he realized that his resistance was not proof that kindness was false. It was proof that he had been deprived of it. The mendicant said, "Do not be discouraged if the heart does not open instantly. A clenched fist does not become an open palm in one moment. You practice, and the hand learns." The seeker whispered, "But if I am kind to myself, will I not become complacent?" The mendicant shook his head. "This is a common fear," he said, "because harshness has convinced you it is the only force that moves you. But observe carefully. Harshness may move you, yes, but it moves you in chains. Kindness moves you in freedom. Kindness does not erase responsibility. Kindness makes responsibility sustainable." He paused, then added, "When you love a child, you still guide the child. You do not say, 'Do anything you want.' You say, 'Come, let me show you the way.' That guidance is compassion. You can guide yourself the same way." Then he told a story, old as the teachings, about a man who carried a heavy bundle of sticks on his back and complained of pain. And each time he complained, he added another stick, believing that more burden would build strength. He grew exhausted and bitter and began to hate the journey. One day a wise traveler asked him, "Why do you punish yourself?" And the man said, "Because if I do not, I will be weak." And the traveler replied, "You are already weak because you are crushed. Strength is not adding weight. Strength is knowing when to set weight down." And the man, trembling, set down half the bundle, and for the first time in years, he could breathe. And the traveler said, "This is compassion, not indulgence, relief of unnecessary burden." The seeker felt the meaning of that story in his ribs, because he had been carrying unnecessary sticks, the sticks of self-judgment, self-contempt, self-pressure. The mendicant continued, "The Buddha taught that self-hatred does not lead to awakening. Self-hatred leads to more suffering. If you want freedom, you must learn to be a friend to yourself." The seeker asked, "What does it mean to be my friend?" The mendicant answered, "It means when you are anxious, you do not call yourself weak. When you are tired, you do not call yourself useless. When you make a mistake, you do not call yourself broken. You speak to yourself as you would speak to someone you genuinely care about. Firmly, yes, but kindly." He offered a simple method, something the seeker could use when the harsh voice appeared, especially at night. "When you hear the harsh voice," he said, "do not debate it with 1,000 arguments. Simply recognize it. Ah, the guard is here. Then thank it. You tried to protect me." And then offer a kinder instruction. "You may rest now. I will guide us with gentleness." This is not fantasy. This is training. The seeker tried it inwardly, and he felt something surprising. The harsh voice softened slightly, as if it had been waiting to be relieved of its duty. The mendicant then recited a verse, and it sounded like an old lullaby for the inner war. "I do not heal by striking my own heart. I do not wake by calling myself broken. Kindness is the path, steady and true. I lay down the sword, and silence comes through." The seeker repeated it, and the river's chant felt softer, less like noise, more like music. The mendicant then offered a deeper teaching, because compassion is not only a feeling, it is a view of reality. Compassion, he said, is the recognition that everything arises from conditions, and because everything arises from conditions, blame is limited and kindness is wise. When you see this, you stop treating yourself as an enemy. You begin to treat your mind as a tired companion who learned certain habits in order to survive. He paused, then spoke the most important sentence of the night, as if placing it gently into the seeker's hands. "Your suffering is not proof you are unworthy," he said. "Your suffering is proof you need care." The seeker's chest shook with quiet tears, because those words named what he had been unable to name, that the longing for peace was not greed. It was a living being asking for kindness. At last, the mendicant gave the seeker a final practice for the 12th part, something that could turn compassion from an idea into a living habit. "Tonight," he said, "as you rest, each time you return to breath, add one drop of kindness. Return and whisper inwardly, 'May I rest.' Return and whisper, 'May I be gentle.' Return and whisper, 'It's okay.' You are teaching the nervous system that awareness is safe. You are teaching the heart that it does not need to fight itself to be loved." The river flowed, the reeds bowed, the night held them both, and the seeker understood, perhaps for the first time, that the Buddha's wisdom was not cold discipline. It was warm clarity, a clarity that sees suffering and responds with compassion, and in that compassion, the inner war begins to end, and when war ends, even the river of thoughts can become a lullaby. On the 13th night, the seeker came to the river as one comes to a last candle after a long journey, not because the candle is grand, but because its small flame is enough, and the one who has walked through darkness learns to value what is steady more than what is bright. He did not come to demand silence, and he did not come to prove anything to himself, and he did not come to win, because he had begun to understand a truth that is simple and therefore difficult, that the deepest peace is not produced by force, it is permitted by release. The night was quiet in the way old nights are quiet, as if the world were listening to itself, and the sky held a thin veil of cloud with faint stars behind it, like distant incense, and the reeds bowed toward the water, as if offering a prayer without words, and the river moved with its ancient low chant, steady, unhurried, continuing whether anyone praised it or feared it. The seeker sat on the bank and entered the boat of breath, cool air entering, warm air leaving, and in the first few minutes the mind behaved as it always behaved, sending small visitors across the surface. A thought about tomorrow, a memory of yesterday, a subtle comparison, a flicker of fear, a quick judgment about the quality of the practice itself, and the seeker met each one as he had learned, with a simple naming: future, memory, comparing, fear, judging, and then a gentle return, not like a whip cracking, but like a hand guiding a tired child back to bed. Yet tonight, he noticed something new, something quiet and decisive beneath all the techniques, that every disturbance, no matter its costume, carried the same hidden demand, the demand to control, the demand to secure, the demand to make the next moment behave, to make the world guarantee safety, to make life stop changing. And he saw, with the calm shock of recognition, that much of his suffering had been a long argument with reality itself, a long refusal to accept the nature of water, the nature of wind, the nature of being alive, and that the mind's noise was often nothing but the sound of clenching. He felt the clenching in the body, jaw, chest, belly, and he understood, not as a theory, but as a bodily truth, that control is a posture, and the posture of control is tension, and tension is the mother of inner noise. And in that moment, without drama and without heroism, he softened the posture, the way one loosens a fist that has been gripping too long, and he whispered inwardly, not as poetry, but as permission, "I can let go now." The river did not stop. The thoughts did not vanish. But the relationship changed, and relationship is everything. The mendicant arrived then, not as a stranger, not even as a teacher, but as a familiar presence, like a lantern that has been walking beside the seeker all along. He sat beside him without disturbing the quiet, and for a long time they shared only breath and the voice of water, and the seeker felt a gratitude rise, gentle, clean, not proud, because he realized that the path had not been about becoming a different person. It had been about coming home to what was already here, the simple capacity to notice, to soften, to return, to be kind. At last, the mendicant spoke, and his voice was low, slow, and warm, like the final words of a story told to help someone sleep. "You have learned," he said, "the secret the river has been trying to teach you since the first night." The seeker barely moved his lips. "What secret?" The mendicant's answer came like a long exhale. "That peace is not something you seize," he said. "Peace is what remains when you stop seizing." The seeker felt tears gather behind his eyes, not from sadness, but from relief, because he had spent so long trying to grab the mind and force it into quiet, and now he was being shown the gentler law. When you release the fight, the water clears on its own, not perfectly, not forever, but enough, and enough is holy. "But how?" the seeker whispered. "Do I let go for real when the mind keeps trying to hold?" The mendicant nodded, as if honoring the question as an old friend. "You let go," he said, "in small ways, many times. Letting go is not one grand act. It is a daily practice, a nightly practice, a breath-by-breath practice. Each time you notice clenching, you soften. Each time you notice grabbing, you open your hand. Each time you notice story, you return. This is letting go." He pointed toward the river, where the current moved around stones and carried leaves without complaint. "Look," he said, "the river does not hold the leaf. The river carries it. Then it releases it downstream. This is the nature of flowing. Your mind can learn the same." The seeker listened, and the mendicant continued, because he knew the final teaching must be something the seeker could carry into the rest of his life without needing the riverbank. "In the end," he said, "you will not remember every method. You will not always count to 10. You will not always name every thought perfectly, but if you remember one thing, remember this: soften the body, lengthen the exhale, and stop arguing with the moment." The seeker felt the truth of it immediately, because he could feel how the exhale, when it was long and slow, told the nervous system, "There is no tiger in this room," and how the body, when it softened even a little, stopped sending emergency signals to the mind, and how the mind, when it stopped receiving emergency signals, stopped inventing emergencies. It was all one system, one river, one bank, one sky. The mendicant then offered the seeker a final, complete night ritual, not complicated, not heavy, meant to be used as a gentle bridge into sleep, and he spoke it slowly, as if each sentence were a stone placed carefully so the seeker could cross without slipping. "First," he said, "feel the ground. Let the bed, the earth, the weight beneath you carry you, so you do not carry yourself so tightly. Second, soften 3 places: jaw, shoulders, belly. Not perfectly. 1 small softening is enough. Third, lengthen the exhale as if blowing warmth across a cold window. Let the inhale come naturally. Let the exhale be your offering. Fourth, when a thought comes, do not fight it. Name it once if you can: memory, future, fear, and return to breath. Fifth, add kindness. 1 phrase, simple and true: may I rest. Nothing more is required." The seeker followed, and the river's chant began to feel less like something to manage and more like something to receive. like rain heard from inside a warm room. He asked quietly, "And what about the pain that still exists, the uncertainties that still exist, the losses that might still come?" The mendicant looked at him with eyes that did not lie. "They will exist," he said. "This is the nature of life. But you do not have to suffer twice. You do not have to rehearse pain that has not arrived. And when pain arrives, you can meet it with presence and compassion. The Buddha's wisdom is not denial. It is the end of unnecessary suffering." Then the mendicant spoke of gratitude, not as forced positivity, not as a mask, but as a gentle medicine that turns the mind away from endless scanning and toward quiet appreciation, because the mind that is grateful cannot be fully clenched. Gratitude opens the hand. "Before you sleep," he said, "name 3 simple things that are true right now: a roof, a blanket, a breath, a moment of quiet, a chance to rest, a body that still carries you, a heart that still learns. Do not search for big miracles. Let small truth be enough." The seeker did this inwardly, and he felt his chest soften in a way it rarely did, because the mind, for once, was not hunting for threats. It was noticing shelter. The mendicant then recited the final verse of the whole journey, not ornate, not loud, but steady, like a lullaby meant to dissolve clenching. "River may flow, and thoughts may pass. I do not hold. I let them drift. Jaw soft, breath long, heart kind and wide. I lay down control, and sleep arrives." The seeker repeated it, and something deep inside him accepted the truth, that he did not need to win the night. He only needed to stop fighting it. And in that acceptance, the river became a lullaby. He felt the bank within him, steady presence, holding the water without hatred. He felt the boat of breath rising and falling without fear. He felt thoughts pass like distant birds, their calls fading quickly in the wide sky of awareness. He felt the body becoming heavier, not as a burden, but as a sign of safety, the way a child becomes heavy in a parent's arms when sleep finally trusts the room. The mendicant's last words were almost a whisper, as if spoken directly to the seeker's nervous system, not to his intellect. "Let go," he said, "not of life, but of the grip. Let the river be a river. Let the mind be a mind. Let the body be tired. Let the night be night. You are safe enough to soften. You are kind enough to return. You are human enough to rest." And the seeker, who had once come to the river with clenched fists and desperate demands, now sat as if he were part of the valley itself, breathing with the water, resting with the earth, no longer trying to control what cannot be controlled, no longer feeding fear with stories, no longer punishing wandering with shame. And because he stopped doing these things, the inner noise lost its fuel, and what remained was not emptiness, but gentle presence, warm and ordinary, the kind of presence that does not need to announce itself. So if you are listening now, let the teaching be simple, because night loves simplicity. Feel the weight of your body. Soften the jaw. Lengthen the exhale. Name one thought and release it. Whisper, "May I rest," and let the river of thoughts continue without dragging you under, until the sound of water is no longer noise but music, and the music becomes sleep, and sleep carries you the way calm water carries a boat, quietly, naturally, without struggle, into the deep, healing darkness where nothing needs to be solved, and everything, for a while, is allowed to be.